Chapter 475. Tai Chinchio stood up and cupped his hands together. Thank you, Grandmaster Yao. I guarantee that you will not regret the decision you made today. Qin Yu lightly said, whether or not I regret it, only time will tell. As for Feng Changjing's death, Tai Chinchio smiled. Grandmaster Yao, rest assured that I will handle things appropriately and not allow you to be harassed. Qin Yu nodded. That's good. He didn't thank him, because there was no need to do so to begin with. If it weren't for Tai Chinchio's schemes, how could he have fallen into such a situation? The chief elder's complexion sank. But before he could speak, he was stopped by Tai Chinchio. I will prepare everything in a few days. Before then, if Grandmaster Yao needs anything, please feel free to tell me. It's getting late, so I won't disturb Grandmaster's rest any longer. His body submerged into the shadows. Tai Chinchio's smile faded away. Keep a close eye on Yao Bin. I don't want any mistakes to occur in this matter. The chief elder's heart chilled. He respectfully nodded. Qin Yu watched as Tai Chinchio and Tai Chinchio left. Then, he turned and entered the main hall. The moment the doors closed, his complexion paled. In the situation just now, he had no choice but to agree. But it was impossible for him to give up on the Demon Ascension Gate, as Tai Chinchio hoped. 100 years was far too long for someone like Qin Yu, who had only cultivated for several dozen years. Ningling was in the immortal sect, and although her life wasn't in danger, he didn't know what the exact situation was. Qin Yu couldn't wait. Even if it was a year, he still wouldn't be able to endure it. Tai Chinchio was unfathomably deep. He had at least a peak blue sea cultivation. As the master of one of the 12 branches of the demonic path, the Black Demon sect, he must have some hidden cards in his hands. Fighting with him wasn't a wise decision. Drawing back 10,000 steps, even if Qin Yu racked his brains and escaped from the Black Demon sect, with a Demon Ascension Gate about to open, what status could he use to participate? It was already too late to make any further plans. Qin Yu took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. It seemed that there was only one path left, and that was to have Tai Chinchio change his mind on his own initiative. However, this person had gone to great lengths to not hesitate to kill Feng Changjing in order to frame him. In addition to the hidden dangers within his body, wanting Tai Chinchio to change his mind would be difficult. After eating and drinking their fill, Tuba and Tutu woke up to discover that they had been imprisoned once more. The dungeon cultivators that were panic-stricken like chickens suddenly became arrogant once more. The two glanced at each other, a bit of restlessness growing in their hearts. Tuba glanced at Tutu, and Tutu slightly nodded. Then he loudly cursed out loud, saying that all of you are just courting death and so on. Then someone jumped out and explained to them exactly what had happened. Hearing that His Highness had only killed one person, the two giants immediately felt relieved. They lazily laid down on the withered grass, their eyes glancing at the cultivators in the dungeon outside, occasionally flashing a cold light. What a bunch of idiots. His Highness had always planned before taking action. Since he dared to kill this person, he had absolute confidence that he wouldn't get into any trouble. Moreover, even if there is trouble, do you think a bullshit Feng family that popped out of nowhere is worthy of flapping its wings in front of His Highness? Ridiculous. Sure enough, it didn't take long before one of the dungeon cultivators rushed in with a long face. The other dungeon cultivators shivered, and many of them began to cry. You can't play with people like that. The plot keeps changing, but where is the scriptwriter? Come out, and I'll beat you to death. If you mess around like this, how can we live? Tuba and Tutu chuckled coldly. No matter how the people outside nearly bent their backs and kowtowed to the ground, they didn't have any intention of leaving. When Qin Yu appeared in the dungeon, he glanced around and guessed what had happened. It was different from yesterday, when his heart was restless and he acted with his hands and feet tied. Now that he knew the truth and was sure that Tai Chinchio wouldn't harm him before the hidden dangers in his body were eliminated, Qin Yu's eyes turned icy cold. Another important reason was that he was in a really bad mood right now. It would seem that everyone did not take this Yao's words to heart. In that case, let us calculate what you all will have to pay. A light voice reverberated through the dark dungeon. The legs of all the dungeon cultivators weakened, and they nearly fell to the ground. My lord, how about you leave this matter to me? I will definitely satisfy you. Su Sheng rushed in with a ruddy complexion, a completely different person from yesterday. It could be seen that he had spent the night happily. But was the dark-skinned cultivator in the breeding garden still in good condition? When they saw Su Sheng's figure clearly, the people in the dungeon who were already trembling couldn't endure the psychological pressure any longer, and they fell to the ground on the spot with a plop. There were even a few who were mentally weak who had rolled their eyes and started foaming at the mouth. Su Sheng spat, not a hint of sympathy on his face. Stop pretending. We're all old acquaintances here. Whatever you know, I know. He swept his eyes around. Where are you old farts? Hurry up and roll out here to greet Grandmaster Yao. As he spoke, he turned around, a flattering smile on his face. Although this vile and rampant appearance was a bit disgusting, it actually improved Qin Yu's mood by a great deal. The chief steward was carried out, his body shaking like a sieve. It was said that when he was captured, this old fellow was lying on top of his new concubine and was so frightened that he bent over. He feared it would be difficult for him to walk out of this shadow for the rest of his life. Of course, without accident, the chief steward likely wouldn't have another chance to display his might in the future. Qin Yu nodded. Su Sheng's arrogance suddenly rose by several levels. He bared his teeth like a vicious dog. Old thing, you never thought there would be a day like this, right? Tell me, how do you plan on apologizing to the Grandmaster? Let me warn you, don't play any tricks. In the entire Black Demon sect, if I say I'm well informed, no one will dare to say they're first. Young Master, this was a title he hadn't heard for a long time. Qin Yu's thoughts were instantly pulled away. He thought back to the time when he was incomparably simple and honest. Later on, he turned into a deep and profound brother. Was he doing well? But in an instant, Qin Yu cleanly restrained his thoughts and focused his attention on the most critical point. Well-informed, looking at Su Sheng's back, a thoughtful light flashed in Qin Yu's eyes. The chief steward was well aware that he no longer had a chance. If he played any more tricks, even if he was killed by Yao Bin, he would have died in vain. Why? Didn't he see that Feng Chongjing had died, and this surname, Yao, was still alive and kicking? Although he didn't know the inside story, this didn't stop this old dog from smelling something dark. Like a bamboo tube, the chief steward handed over all of his wealth. He stuck out his skinny butt and lay on the ground, tears streaming down his face. He begged Grandmaster Yao to be merciful and give him a chance to live. When the other stewards saw this, they instantly understood that the situation was hopeless. How could they still dare to resist stubbornly? All of them knelt down neatly and sacrificed their wealth to save their lives. This transaction was slightly painful, but it was still very worth it. Su Sheng opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but in the end he cursed out loud. Couldn't these bastards have the slightest bit of backbone or hope for a fluke? You've made such a thorough confession without leaving me any leeway. How can I show myself in front of Grandmaster Yao? You bastards, you bastards. Tuba, Tutu. I'll leave this place to you. Qin Yu turned and walked away. Su Sheng, come with me. Su Sheng was overjoyed. He eagerly followed. There was an interrogation room in the dungeon. Qin Yu pushed open the door and walked in. As he looked around, surprise filled his eyes. This was because he was familiar with this place. In the past, he had almost been dismembered by Su Sheng here. Behind him, Su Sheng subconsciously shrank his neck, nearly crying. He thought to himself, why did you come here? Please don't be impulsive and kill me because of your past hatred. Master, I had eyes but failed to see in the past and offended you. Since then, I have been tormented by remorse every night. I know I was wrong, but I beg you to be magnanimous and not lower yourself to my level. Qin Yu bitterly smiled. What is this all about? Shut up. I have something to ask you. Yao Bin instantly fell silent, a pitiful expression on his face. Qin Yu ignored him. Do you know of any methods in the Black Demon sect that can help a person obtain a very, very high status? Yao Bin blinked his eyes. How high are you talking about? Qin Yu said, very high. Yao Bin, there was no way to continue this conversation. Luckily, Qin Yu continued, so high that even the Black Demon sect master has to respect them. Yao Bin sucked in a breath of cold air. His intuition told him that there was something here, something major. If he could help Grandmaster Yao solve this problem, he would definitely gain some points in his heart. If he could hold on to this thick thigh, it wouldn't be difficult for him to reach the peak of his life. But in the sect master was supreme, and there was no one that could contend with his will. To obtain the sect master's respect, another interpretation was to become an existence on the same level as him. This was because in this world, only by being on the same level could there be respect. But this was impossible. Master, I do know a great deal of information about the sect, but if you want to stand on the same level as the sect master, this is impossible. Su Sheng had a nervous expression. The demonic path places the greatest importance on hierarchy. The dignity of those at the top cannot be touched. This is especially true in the Black Demon sect, which is one of the 12 branches of the demonic path. If you want to stand on the same level as the sect master, there are only 3 paths you can take. The first is that you have strength that surpasses the sect master. The demonic path respects the strong, and if you're stronger, then you will naturally obtain respect. The second is that you become a demonic path elder. According to convention, the rank of a demonic path elder is equal to that of a branch sect master. Seeing Qin Yu's complexion become increasingly gloomy, Su Sheng gulped. The third is that Grandmaster becomes the sect master of the other demonic path branches. Su Sheng paused, his eyes cloudy and uncertain. Qin Yu asked, what are you thinking of? Master, I remember a rumor in the sect, but I cannot judge whether it is true or not. Speak. Su Sheng clenched his teeth. Not too long ago, Grandmaster and Jiang Taisho had a gambling match to detoxify poison. Do you remember the sealed pagoda that sealed countless poisons? Qin Yu lightly said, of course I remember. His eyes flashed. Could it be that the sealed pagoda? Su Sheng nodded. That's right. A long time ago, the demonic path originally had 13 branches, but now only 12 remain. The one that disappeared was the strange and terrifying myriad poison sect. In the rumors, the sealed pagoda is the most precious inherited treasure of the myriad poison sect. As long as anyone can reach the end of the sealed pagoda, they can obtain its recognition and re-establish the myriad poison sect. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. In other words, as long as I become the master of the sealed pagoda, that is the same as becoming the master of the myriad poison sect. I will be able to stand on equal footing with Tai Qianxiu. In theory, that is indeed the case. But the myriad poison sect has perished for a long time, and the 12 subordinate branches of the demonic path have stabilized themselves. I fear that they do not wish to see the myriad poison sect reappear. Moreover, the poisons in the sealed pagoda are incomparably terrifying. Master, you should be well aware that completing the master recognition of the sealed pagoda is far too dangerous. Su Sheng cautiously said. He had just risen from the ashes of a serf. He didn't want his backer to inexplicably play him to death. Thinking of this, Su Sheng suddenly felt deep regret. If he knew this would happen, he wouldn't have mentioned the sealed pagoda. What would he do now? Chapter 476. The chief elder was well aware that if something happened to Yao Bin again, he would surely be beaten up miserably by the enraged sect master. Thus, the degree to which he monitored Qin Yu was so strict that it made one's hair stand on end. At the start, the Punishment Division's black-robe cultivators tried to hide their actions, but they soon discovered that this was futile. It was unknown how they asked for instructions, but they soon became brazen. Thus, when Qin Yu aimlessly walked through the Black Demon sect's entrance, behind him, to the left, to the right, there would always be a trail of black clothes passing by. The chief elder frowned. Yao Bin is wandering around the entrance. Yes, this subordinate still cannot see what Grandmaster Yao's goal is. The chief elder's eyes were dark and uncertain. Keep a close eye on him. Report back at any time. The Punishment Division cultivators bowed and left. The chief elder's complexion was ice cold. Although he wasn't afraid that Yao Bin would play any tricks in the sect, he still felt uneasy in his heart. He clenched his teeth, his voice like a bone-chilling wind. Yao Bin, I want to see just what you can do. The bluestone path was nearly covered by the branches and leaves on both sides. There was a thick layer of leaves on the ground. It seemed that very few people passed through here. Qinyu looked around several times. He turned and walked down the path. When he emerged from the other end, his black robes were covered in dried leaves. It wasn't here. He stood where he was for a moment. He felt as if his thoughts had wandered into the wrong place. Su Sheng had only said that the sealed pagoda was in the Black Demon sect. Since no one knew what it was, there was no need for it to be hidden. Like a bolt of lightning, Qinyu suddenly felt something in his heart. He looked up. This was a small square surrounded by lush trees. There were many Black Demon sect cultivators under the shade of the trees. Some were lazily sitting down, enjoying the scenery. Some had their eyes closed in meditation, and some were walking back and forth on the dried leaves. He was a bit surprised. This was because there were very few cultivators that indulged themselves and didn't waste their lives cultivating. In other words, this was an extremely rare sight. What Qinyu didn't know was that this small square was extremely famous in the Black Demon sect. This was because it seemed to contain some sort of invisible strength that could help cultivators break through their shackles. Over the countless years, there were many cultivators that made breakthroughs in this small square. Although it wasn't much when placed in the massive population, everyone still thought that they might be the next lucky person. Thus, every time his cultivation wasn't going smoothly, there would always be people who would come here. This was what led to the situation Qinyu saw today. Of course, Qinyu didn't pay too much attention to these things today. His eyes slowly swept over the small square. The slightly damaged floor tiles, the fallen leaf piled up in the corner, the flourishing grass and trees around, and a small white tower that was about 3 to 4 meters tall at the edge of the square, half of its body covered by vines. Everything was normal. Qinyu stopped at the edge of the square and carefully looked at it. Then, he sighed with emotion. The sealed pagoda really was a pagoda. What seemed like a useless statement was actually an indescribable shock when he saw this beautiful little white pagoda that was wrapped in lush green vines and hidden deep within the branches. The white tip of the pagoda was washed clean by the rain. Under the sunlight, it reflected a hazy halo, pure and white. Perhaps it was because he knew that a poison that could cause a catastrophe was sealed within it. That was why he found it hard to accept that it was harmless at this moment. Qinyu stood beneath the pagoda, his eyes full of praise. This was truly worthy of being the legendary inheritance treasure of the myriad poison sect. It was only when he arrived at the square that he sensed an unusual aura. And this feeling was because of the soul summoning bell in his soul space. By himself, even if he stood in front of the sealed pagoda, he still wouldn't be able to discover anything. On the edge of the small square, several Punishment Division cultivators looked left and right, but they didn't find anything wrong. But the order they received was to report to their superiors at any time. So this matter soon entered the ears of the chief elder. In a long corridor, the dignified chief elder immediately turned green as he heard where Qinyu was. The sealed pagoda was one of the Black Demon sect's greatest secrets. The number of people that had the qualifications to know everything could be counted on one hand. As the sect's chief elder, a high-level character, second only to the sect master, he naturally knew of this matter. If it was said that Qinyu just happened to be walking around today and also happened to be standing in front of the sealed pagoda, then that was far too much of a fucking coincidence. In the blink of an eye, the chief elder recalled everything that had happened. It was clear that Yao Bin didn't want to be manipulated by the sect master and wanted to resist through the sealed pagoda. What a madman. The Black Demon sect had obtained the sealed pagoda for tens of thousands of years. They clearly knew that it was a peak supreme treasure and also represented the status of the 13th branch of the demonic path. So why hadn't they tried? But there had never been a single time when there was even the slightest hope of success. Everyone that had tried to subdue the sealed pagoda had ultimately been destroyed by the poison. No, if Yao Bin wanted to die, then he couldn't do anything about it. But now was not the time. Otherwise, the sect master would send him to hell and bury him along with Yao Bin. "You bastard!" With a roar, the ground beneath the chief elder collapsed, and the long corridor was instantly blown apart. His figure shot into the skies, leaving behind a stunned punishment division cultivator. He didn't know what had happened, but his lips soon began to shiver. If the chief elder lost his composure like this, then there was absolutely something major that had occurred. Within the punishment division, the shrill sound of alarms spread out in all directions. Small square. Grandmaster Yao could be said to be the most famous character in the Black Demon sect right now. First, he killed Feng Changjing, and then he trampled over the veteran powerhouse Elder Tianjun. And, most importantly, he was still safe and sound up until now. This was extremely terrifying. The Black Demon sect cultivator who first discovered Qin, you stepping into the small square, had his jaw drop open. His mind buzzed, and all of the enlightenment he had felt just now instantly vanished without a trace. But at this time, he didn't have any thoughts of being angry. There was only one thought in his mind. Was it too late for him to run away now? This surname, Yao, was currently an evil star. He had heard that the dungeon had already suffered a calamity. Looking at those black-hearted and merciless dungeon stewards, he could imagine just what sort of inhumane torture they had experienced. Now that Yao Bin had appeared in the small square, it was clear that he was about to stir up trouble. Whoever wanted to stay here was a bastard. But the key question was, if he left first, would this surname, Yao, bear a grudge against him? It was rumored that this person was narrow-minded and vengeful. Once someone bore a grudge against him, they feared they would die a miserable death. Because of these thoughts, more and more cultivators discovered Qin, you standing in front of the small white pagoda. Their eyes were wide with panic, but their feet seemed to take root, and they didn't dare to move at all. What nonsense if no one else moved and I left by myself. It would be hard not to be remembered. Suddenly, the sound of breaking air echoed out from the distance. Before he arrived, strong winds were stirred up as he flew, sweeping through the entire square. "Yao Bin!" His shout was filled with anger. The aura of a superior being seemed to press down on one's chest, making it hard for one to breathe. The chief elder's figure landed in the small square. Countless Black Demon sect cultivators nearly cried out in the wind. Fuck! Even the chief elder had appeared this time. This matter definitely wasn't small. Damn, please don't implicate me. Qin Yu turned around. "Chief, what is the meaning of this?" The chief elder nearly gnashed his teeth. "Yao Bin, you must think this through. There are some things that once you start, you can't turn back." He took a deep breath and slowed down his voice. "You are still young and have plenty of time to squander, so why bother with this moment?" Qin Yu smiled. "What is the chief elder saying? I don't understand." The chief elder roared. "You stubborn fool. Hurry and come back. You're seeking death." Qin Yu was suddenly enlightened. So, the chief elder was referring to this small pagoda. I was only curious as to how something like the sealed pagoda could appear so harmless. I stopped to take a few more glances. "Chief elder, there is no need to worry." In the small square, all of the panic-stricken Black Demon sect cultivators heard these words. They nearly stopped breathing. Sealed pagoda. Oh, my mother. At this time, how could they care about anything else? If they stayed here any longer, that was the same as seeking death. Whoosh, whoosh. The Black Demon sect cultivators moved like rabbits as they fled from the small square. But before they could escape, a dense crowd of punishment department cultivators appeared in front of them. Blue veins popped up on the chief elder's forehead. "Capture everyone. Do not let a single one escape." The sealed pagoda was a legend within the Black Demon sect. Although everyone knew that the sect had such a terrifying treasure, just what was it? Where was it? This had always been a secret. But now, this secret had almost been completely exposed by Qin Yu. The chief elder was enraged, but his heart couldn't help but sink. Yao Bin's attitude wasn't good at all. When the punishment department's people moved, everyone in the small square didn't dare to say a single word of nonsense. They obediently allowed themselves to be captured and escorted away. However, tears were already flowing down their hearts. If a stone fell from the sky, it just had to hit my head. This was probably how these people felt right now, feeling aggrieved and helpless. The chief elder took a deep breath and coldly said, Yao Bin, I don't know where you obtained this information from, but since everyone is well aware of it, then let's be frank. I will give you some data. For the last tens of thousands of years, the Seal Pagoda has remained in the Black Demon sect. According to the complete records, the sect has carried out a total of 137 attempts. Of those who tried, the strongest were Peak Blue Seas and over 30 alchemy experts. As for the others, they all had their own brilliant points. What they all had in common was their astonishing divine sense and tyrannical mortal bodies. Some of them even awakened powerful bloodlines. But without exception, all of these people failed and died miserable deaths. Thus, in these past years, the Black Demon sect has stopped trying. Ask yourself, can you be stronger than the 137 people that my Black Demon sect has chosen over the last tens of thousands of years? If you want the Sealed Pagoda to recognize you as its master, that is an absolute certainty of death. Yao Bin, is it really worth it for you to participate in the Demon Ascension Gate? Qin Yu was silent for a moment. Chief, your words are clear, but I still want to try. The chief elder roared, You are courting death. His eyes were cold and gloomy. Don't forget, this is the Black Demon sect. What I don't allow, you cannot do. Qin Yu nodded. The chief elder is right. But I have noticed something. From the moment you arrived until now, no matter how angry or irritated you are, you haven't taken even half a step forwards. It seems as if there is an invisible barrier around you in this small square. My guess is that this might be related to the sealed pagoda in front of us. What do you think? The chief elder's pupil shrank. He tried his best not to reveal a shocked expression, but he was well aware that his stiff expression already explained everything. Qin Yu smiled. Indeed, my guess is correct. The sealed pagoda was the 13th branch of the demonic path, the inheritance treasure of the myriad poison sect. Its highest standard was clearly to select a qualified master and re-establish the myriad poison sect. Although he didn't know why the sealed pagoda would appear in the Black Demon sect, it was clear that the Black Demon sect only had the right to preserve it. If someone tried to recognize a master, then whether they failed or not, this was a situation that the sealed pagoda was willing to see. If they tried to stop them, that would violate the highest standard of the sealed pagoda. The truth was that after saying so much, he had to thank the soul summoning bell in his soul space. Through it, Qin Yu could feel the faint fluctuations of the sealed pagoda's aura. These fluctuations indicated that the sealed pagoda was observing him. In addition to the chief elder's actions, this was what allowed Qin Yu to make his previous judgment. Now, it seemed that his judgment was correct. As long as he stood beneath the sealed pagoda, there was no one that could stop him from attempting to recognize a master. A sealed pagoda going crazy was not a situation that the Black Demon sect wished to see. Just as the chief elder was about to speak, he was interrupted by someone. Yao Bin, you are indeed smart. But smart people are often too confident. And when they are overconfident, they will die. Tai Qianqiu's figure appeared. His expression was like that of an ancient well. But as long as one was in a high position, they would be able to maintain a calm demeanor. Perhaps at this time, he wished that he could tear Qin Yu to pieces and then boil him in oil. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. Greetings, sect master. He stood up, a helpless expression on his face. I am well aware of how terrifying the sealed pagoda is. If I had any other choice, I wouldn't be willing to take such a risk. But I must participate in the Demon Ascension Gate. If the sect master doesn't allow it, then I can only resort to this method. Tai Qianqiu had a faint expression. Is the promise that I made to you not worth 100 years of time? Qin Yu said, perhaps in the eyes of others, the sect master is extremely benevolent, but I am not willing. Tai Qianqiu was silent for a long time. Grandmaster Yao, everything can be discussed. If you wish to participate in the Demon Ascension Gate, then it isn't necessarily impossible for me to allow it. How about we sit down and talk? Qin Yu shook his head. I do not trust the sect master. With these words, it was impossible to persuade him otherwise. The chief elder was enraged. Yao Bin, don't be too insolent. Do you really think that the Black Demon sect can't do anything to you? Qin Yu seriously thought about it. Perhaps there is, but it will be very troublesome to use such methods. Moreover, there might even be serious consequences. You? The chief elder's face flushed red. Tai Qianqiu's voice was cold. It seems that Grandmaster Yao has already made up his mind. Since that is the case, I will no longer try to persuade you. But I must remind Grandmaster that if you feel that something is wrong, immediately withdraw. I might be able to protect your life. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. Thank you, Sect Master. He turned and stepped forwards. With the sealed pagoda in front of him, ripples appeared in space. It was like an invisible gate had opened and Qin Yu's figure submerged within. The chief elder bowed. Sect Master, please punish me. Tai Qianqiu coldly sneered. If Yao Bin dies, I will. He looked at the sealed pagoda, his eyes gloomy. But in this gloominess, there was also a bit of hesitation. Yao Bin's cultivation was tyrannical, and he also knew just how dangerous the sealed pagoda was. Yet, he still insisted on trying in this situation. Could it be that he was truly confident? But how was this possible? As for what the situation within the sealed pagoda was like after the myriad poison sect was destroyed, no one knew. This was because anyone that entered afterwards and attempted to complete the process of recognizing a master had all perished within. Qin Yu frowned. He swept his eyes around, not relaxing his guard at all because of the little blue lamp's existence. The little blue lamp possessed a tyrannical immunity to poison, but it couldn't help Qin Yu resist other attacks. The myriad poison sect's supreme treasure likely possessed more than just poison. A dusky world entered his field of vision. Countless masses of air floated in the air, and they were so quiet that they seemed like numerous, enormous bubbles, giving off a dreamlike feeling. The deathly silence within the sealed pagoda wasn't beyond Qin Yu's expectations. But it was a bit too quiet. Before this thought fell, a gust of wind suddenly blew up in this dusky world. Countless masses of air floated in the air, as if they were weightless. The closest mass of air approached. After a moment of hesitation, Qin Yu didn't dodge. If there was something strange in the world of the sealed pagoda, then it was clearly these masses of air. He might as well give it a try and see just what was hidden within. Taking a step back, he was at the outermost periphery of the sealed pagoda. Even if it was dangerous, it shouldn't be fatal. Puff! The moment it touched Qin Yu, the mass of air dispersed, flowing through his pores and fusing into his body. Qin Yu closed his eyes. A faint layer of black energy appeared on his face, slowly wriggling like a living creature. But soon, this layer of black gas quickly melted away like snow under the scorching sun. Qin Yu opened his eyes, a sharp light flashing within them. It really was poison. If his senses weren't wrong, this should be a type of poison called questioning heart. It could cause a cultivator's mind to fall into chaos, causing them to fall into an illusion that they couldn't extricate themselves from, eventually leading to cultivation deviation. This poison was tyrannical, but couldn't be considered too dangerous. Even without the little blue lamp, Qin Yu could resolve it on his own. But it couldn't be forgotten that this was only the edge of the sealed pagoda. Moreover, there were so many similar masses of air in front of him that it was impossible to count them all. If it were anyone else, these moving bubbles would be enough to make it difficult for them to even take a single step forward. He tried several more times. Without exception, all of them were poisons. Qin Yu smiled. Since he had determined that these masses of air were poisons, then this seemingly terrifying road ahead of him was actually smooth and level. Shua! Qin Yu's figure moved. Without dodging at all, he held forwards. All of the masses of air that he touched fused into his body. There was so much poison, and the toxicity was so complex and fierce that it surpassed his imagination. But as these poisons drilled into Qin Yu's body, all of their arrogance disappeared, and they turned into docile lambs. They were imprisoned by an invisible strength and continuously poured into Qin Yu's right index finger. causing his fingertip to shine with a warm light and emit a halo of light. Small square. Tai Chinchio was as silent as a stone. He walked in front of the sealed pagoda. Now that Chin Yu had entered and the master recognition test had begun, he wouldn't be rejected by the treasure if he approached. With a flick of his sleeves, strong winds stirred up in the void. All of the vines were instantly stripped away, revealing the complete appearance of the sealed pagoda. The vines that had wrapped around the sealed pagoda for an unknown amount of time had shed countless leaves, but none of them were able to leave a single mark on the surface of the sealed pagoda. Now that it was exposed to the sunlight, the entire sealed pagoda began to shimmer. In the pure white light, a black dot appeared at the very bottom of the sealed pagoda. Chapter 477. The chief elder's eyelids jumped up. Sovereign, there is no need to worry. Even if Yao Bin has some methods, how can he possibly subdue the sealed pagoda? Once he has tasted the bitterness of the sealed pagoda, he will naturally beg you to rescue him. Before he finished speaking, his breath caught in his throat. His eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. The black dot at the very bottom of the sealed pagoda suddenly began to move upwards. Although it was incomparably slow, this so-called slow referred to something that could be seen with the naked eye. Whether it was Tai Chinchio or the chief elder, both of them were absolute high-level figures of the Black Demon sect. They had sufficient status and were aware of all the attempts the Black Demon sect had made to the sealed pagoda for the last tens of thousands of years. They naturally understood just what sort of astonishing truth this scene represented. Of the 137 recorded attempts, even the one with the highest cultivation, the peak Blue Sea Old Ancestor whose lifespan was nearing its end, or the one that the sect had coincidentally found 20,000 years ago, the one with the pure body that was said to be impervious to all poisons, could only reach the middle layer of the sealed pagoda. Moreover, one of them had used 24 days, while the other had used 17 days. Compared to Yao Bin, the gap between them was simply terrifying. With this speed, he might be able to reach the middle level of the sealed pagoda in less than 2 hours, right? Tai Chinchio took a deep breath. He had a feeling that from this moment onward, the entire matter had completely escaped his control. More and more masses of air floated in the air. As Chin Yu rapidly moved forwards, they seemed to feel some sort of provocation and also seemed to be attracted to him. They gathered from all directions on their own initiative, submerging Chin Yu's figure like a poisonous storm. More and more poisons appeared and became even more terrifying. But no matter how much they ravaged Chin Yu's path, they couldn't stop him at all, much less kill him. After an unknown period of time, the mass of toxic gas that crazily rushed towards Chin Yu vanished without any warning. The hazy gray world in front of him was clean and empty, as if everything that had just occurred had been nothing but an illusion. He lifted his right hand and looked at his shining index finger. He was well aware that everything that happened was reality. Did he pass? Chin Yu looked up at the gloomy skies above him and slowly shook his head. Things were probably not that simple. Although these poisons were terrifying, as long as one was strong enough and had powerful means, it was still possible to deal with them. The Black Demon sect had spent tens of thousands of years and still hadn't been able to make the sealed pagoda recognize him as its master. How could Chin Yu dare to underestimate it in the least? Suddenly, a corner of Chin Yu's black robes rose up. He looked up into the distance and saw a black line that connected the heavens and earth. Chin Yu's pupils shrank, and a dignified expression crossed his face. He thought to himself, it's coming. The black line at the end of his field of vision quickly grew thicker and larger, approaching at an astonishing speed. Along with it came an earth-shattering roar. He was close. He was close. Finally, they could clearly see that within this hurricane, there was a giant face. Its eyes surged with a green light, and its mouth spat out blood-red flames. Its face twisted as it constantly rotted and regenerated. Intruders die. With a roar, the face stretched out from the hurricane and ruthlessly swallowed at Chin Yu. From the wide, open mouth, one could see that the inside of it was scarlet red, as if there was magma burning deep underground. Qin Yu looked up. His black robes fluttered about him as he nervously opened his mouth and stepped forwards. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, his entire person was like a tiny pebble that scuttled into the huge mouth. The face returned to the hurricane. Its mouth wriggled as if it were chewing and swallowing. But soon, it emitted a shrill howl. The hurricane instantly went berserk. As it crazily spun, countless poisons were sucked into the giant face. But this wasn't able to save anything. The face constantly collapsed and collapsed. It tried to repair itself, but couldn't make up for the terrifying swallowing power that erupted from within. With a cry of despair, the face completely shattered. Then, in several breaths of time, the entire hurricane vanished without a trace. Qin Yu's figure appeared in midair. As he looked at the empty world around him, his eyes flashed. The small square was deathly silent, although they were somewhat mentally prepared for Yao Bin's strength, as they watched helplessly as he broke into the middle level of the sealed pagoda. In less than an hour, the several people that had the qualifications to come here all felt their minds go blank. Gulp? It was unknown just who gulped, but it was particularly grating in this absolute silence. The chief elder blinked his eyes with difficulty. He stubbornly stared at the black that entered the middle of the sealed pagoda. After a long time, he couldn't help but admit that this wasn't an illusion. But how was this possible? Tai Chinchio had a complex look in his eyes. The sealed pagoda had been left in the Black Demon sect for tens of thousands of years. According to the agreement, they were only its guardians. But as time passed, any Black Demon sect cultivator that had the qualifications to know the truth about the sealed pagoda naturally regarded it as a treasure that belonged to the sect. But now, perhaps its true master had appeared. In front of Qin Yu was a vast sea. The sea was boundless and endless. Waves tumbled towards the shore. However, the seawater in front of him was a deathly gray, similar to the sky. Just looking at it made one feel fear. The second level of the sealed pagoda was the Sea of Poison. The entire sea was composed of countless poisons. Every drop of seawater contained poison that was enough to annihilate thousands of lives. Qin Yu tried other methods to cross the sea. For instance, flying or using a boat. But reality proved that he had been thinking too much. This sea could only be crossed by the mortal body. Only by withstanding the corrosion of the poison could one be considered to have passed. Even though Qin Yu had regarded poisons as nothing for these past years, he still felt weak in the face of this sea of poison. Little blue lamp, everything will depend on you. You must give it your all. Hutong. With a leap, Qin Yu was like a giant black fish that swam into the gray sea. He swung his tail and swam deep into the sea. The poisons contained within the sea of poison were strange and terrifying. They didn't corrode the body, but directly corroded and destroyed it. In simpler terms, the sea of poison was an incomparably massive sea filled with highly concentrated sulfuric acid. Even though Qin Yu's demon body had reached the monarch step, he still suffered a great deal. His hair and the surface of his skin were instantly corroded away. Luckily, he saw that the situation was far from good and hid the demon god armor within his body. Otherwise, this treasure armor that matched the demon body and he didn't know how to use would have been completely destroyed. However, the corrosion of the poison could only last for a brief moment before it was suppressed by the little blue lamp. Then, the terrifying abilities of the demon body would appear once more and he would be restored to his original state. Then, he would be corroded again and restored again, samsara cycle. With the power of the demon body, this degree of minor damage wouldn't cause too much damage, even if it were repeated 10,000 times. But the crux of the matter was that every time he was corroded and restored, it was a painful torture for Qin Yu. Although he couldn't personally experience this sort of pain, he could roughly imagine it. His entire body skin was instantly peeled off, and then in the next second, after it had fully regenerated, it would be peeled off a second time, a third time, a fourth time. It was simply horrifying. No matter how firm Qin Yu's will was, under the endless onslaught of pain, he couldn't help but fall into a trance and confusion. Luckily, Every time his consciousness was about to sink into oblivion, the soul-summoning bell would send out a fluctuation that pulled him back. It was like 10,000 years had passed. When a terrifying explosion rang out, Qin Yu was stunned for several breaths of time before he managed to regain his composure. Then, he discovered that he had unknowingly arrived at some lonely island in the middle of the sea. He didn't have time to think about why there would be an island in the sea of poison. Qin Yu rushed out from the seawater, his flesh and blood rapidly growing back. After several breaths of time, his black hair hung down to his shoulders. With a thought, the demon god armor appeared, no different from before. But only Qin Yu knew just how long and terrifying the pain of being peeled off was. He looked at the endless sea behind him, fear in his eyes. At this time, there was another loud explosion. Qin Yu fiercely turned and looked deep into the sea. A black line appeared in his line of sight. It looked like a continent floating in the sea. Since the island had appeared, it was normal for there to be a continent. Qin Yu didn't dwell on this matter. He stared at the continent. The loud explosion came from there. Qin Yu's intuition told him that this distant continent was the key to the sealed pagoda, recognizing him as its master. But he really didn't want to experience the pain of being corroded by the seawater again. After a few hopeless attempts, Qin Yu was pleasantly surprised to discover that the restrictive power of the sea of poison had greatly weakened. He could just barely fly. Whoosh! A beam of light shot out from the island and shakily flew towards the continent. The closer he got to the continent, the weaker the restrictive power became. Qin Yu's speed increased along with it. Soon, the true appearance of this continent in the depths of the sea of poison was completely revealed to Qin Yu. His eyes widened, and he was shocked. Black continent, black mountain peaks, black plants. This was a world formed entirely from darkness. But this wasn't the strangest thing. What was the most unbelievable was that this entire continent in the depths of the sea of poison was wrapped in a faint layer of light. This layer of light was like a cracked egg. Its surface was covered with cracks, and there were even some places that had been damaged. Suddenly, atop the black continent, a volcano erupted. Billowing black flames and black smoke rushed into the skies, condensing into a fierce skeleton. This skeleton fiercely waved the black bone spear in its hands and thrust it into the layer of light outside. Qin Yu watched as the layer of light trembled and cracks appeared where it struck. He finally understood where that loud explosion came from. The skeleton shattered, disintegrating into endless black smoke that fell to the ground and fused into it. The erupting volcano suddenly wriggled. Like a mouth, it emitted an excited roar. "Your strength is about to be exhausted. I will soon come out." The layer of light was silent, but faint traces of light gathered along the cracked surface, forming an arrow of light that ruthlessly shot into the volcano's mouth. The ground violently shook, and the entire volcano of fire instantly disintegrated. Pained roars mixed with wild laughter echoed out from deep beneath the earth. "When I escape, I will use the deaths of trillions of lives as a sacrifice." The shattered earth wriggled and rapidly restored itself. The layer of light returned to silence, but the originally weak light became even dimmer. As Qin Yu was shocked by the scene before him, faint traces of light suddenly appeared, condensing into a figure of light. "Even if it was only 1,000 years earlier, I would still be overjoyed at your arrival. But it is already too late." The figure's face was blurry and its voice was neutral. But one could clearly feel the exhaustion and helplessness in every syllable. Qin Yu hesitated for a moment. "You are?" The figure of light said, "The spirit of the sealed pagoda." Qin Yu looked at the continent. "Then what is it?" The figure of light faintly said, "The spirit of poison." A mistake that shouldn't have existed. After a pause, it continued, "The myriad poison sect was destroyed because of it. I have bitterly endured for tens of thousands of years, but in the end, I cannot escape collapse. When it leaves the sealed pagoda, it will become the source of calamity for the world. Trillions of lives will die because of it." Qin Yu's heart skipped a beat. He seemed to have touched upon some incredible secret. But now wasn't the time to be gossiping. What can I do? You can't do anything. I originally thought that those that could rush here should have enough strength. If they cooperated with me, then there might be a 30 to 40% chance of success. But now, before the figure of light finished speaking, a hint of disappointment flowed out. Qin Yu wasn't angry at being underestimated at all. This was because he had to admit that the spirit of the sealed pagoda and the spirit of poison both possessed the strength to absolutely roll over him. Leave. Tell the people of the Black Demon sect to immediately relocate their sect. Evacuate all life within a radius of 10 million miles. I won't be able to last much longer. Wait, Qin Yu decisively said. Do you think that the Black Demon sect will obediently abandon their sect that they have managed for countless years and relocate because of a few words from me? Even if they are willing, can all life within a radius of 10 million miles really be evacuated? I fear that in the end, it will still be a catastrophe. The figure of light fell silent. I have already tried my best. Qin Yu loudly said, perhaps you should let me try. You have no chance. I naturally have my reasons for being able to arrive here. The figure of light shook its head. If you step in, the spirit of poison will seize your body and use your mortal body to escape my suppression. The reason it has been trapped for so long is because its main body is too large, thus it can't escape. Qin Yu earnestly said, even if I don't go in, how long can you last? 10 years or 100 years? This is only a short period of time, so why not let me try? Believe me, I really don't fear the spirit of poison. On the blurry face of the figure of light, a pair of eyes suddenly brightened. It looked at Qin Yu for a moment and then said, okay. This time, Qin Yu was stunned. Although he knew it was stupid to ask this, he still couldn't help it. Can you tell me why? You change your mind so easily. The figure of light lightly said, my previous master told me that there are no idiots in this world, especially cultivators with profound strength. For you to reach Blue Sea at such a young age, you should be smart. And smart people often won't seek their own death, unless they are too smart. These words were a bit familiar. Qin Yu rubbed his nose. Don't worry. You will soon discover that believing in me is the best decision you have ever made. I hope so. The figure of light had a deep gaze. I wish you good luck. Schwa. Chapter 478. 10 years, 100 years. The light figure bitterly smiled. It looked at the black figure falling to the ground. I originally wanted to save your life, but since you are willing to sacrifice yourself, I will help you. Let's fight for that nearly non-existent hope. Strong winds rushed into Qin Yu's face, pouring into his nose and mouth. He cursed inwardly and quickly adjusted his posture. Then, he came into intimate contact with the black land. With a loud explosion, the ground collapsed and countless cracks spread out. Qin Yu stood at the bottom of the pit, his entire body numb. It took him a great deal of effort to suppress the tumbling desire in his chest and the desire to vomit blood. This black continent was actually pulling him down on its own initiative. Moreover, what was even more terrifying was that after he passed through the layer of light, his cultivation had entered a frozen state. If it weren't for the demon body being sufficiently powerful, anyone else would have turned into a pile of minced meat. But even if he didn't die now, what followed would be far from good. Without his cultivation, all that was left was his mortal body. Qin Yu's complexion changed. This was because he discovered that his feet seemed to be locked to the ground. Did you discover that you can't move at all? Are you feeling fear and despair? At the edge of the pit, the black liquid condensed into a figure. This figure had handsome features and a devilish look in his eyes. He stared at Qin Yu with interest. Qin Yu was panic-stricken. You, who are you? The handsome spirit of poison laughed frivolously. Stop pretending. If you didn't have the permission of that fellow outside, someone as insignificant as you wouldn't be able to come here. His eyes flashed. What secrets are you hiding on your body? Could it be that fellow outside thinks you can harm me? Qin Yu's complexion paled. I never thought that my disguise would be seen through by you. If you know what's good for you, then hurry up and let me go. Otherwise, you won't be able to bear the consequences." The spirit of poison was stunned. He didn't think that his casual bluff would actually cause him to speak the truth. But as he looked at Chinyu several more times, he couldn't help but laugh. This boy's expression wasn't bad, but the corners of his eyes were clearly twitching. His tense body and feigned fierce eyes were full of holes. He lifted a hand, and black liquid flowed between his fingers. "Tell me the truth. Otherwise, do you believe me when I say that the moment my hand falls, you will immediately dissolve into a pile of meat paste?" His fingers slowly approached. Chinyu's eyes twitched even more, and he suddenly cried out in panic, "No, don't kill me. I was just walking when I suddenly came here. I don't even know where I am." The spirit of poison frowned. He thought for a moment and then coldly sneered, "I don't care where you came from. Since you've come here, then stay here and wait for death. I don't want to waste my strength on you." He took a step backwards, and his body melted into the earth, vanishing from sight. Chinyu's tense body relaxed, and he gasped for breath. His eyes swept around in a daze, as if he wanted to cry but had no tears. Of course, all of this was a disguise. This was because from the very first glance, Chinyu discovered that this seemingly cruel and crazy spirit of poison was actually extremely difficult to deal with. What happened next confirmed his conjecture. This fellow was cunning and strange. He obviously desired to possess his body and obtain a chance to escape, but he was actually able to suppress his desire. However, the spirit of poison was still tempted. Otherwise, he could have just killed Chinyu directly. Why would he leave him here to fend for himself? Clearly, it still had its doubts and was still observing. Since he was sure that the spirit of poison was secretly spying on him through some unknown method, Chinyu naturally had to put on a complete act. Thus, he panicked and restless. He tried countless methods to escape, but he still couldn't break free from the imprisonment of the Black Earth. When he discovered that faint traces of poison had begun to drill into his body, his face was filled with panic and despair. Chinyu couldn't help but praise himself. After struggling for a long time, he finally couldn't hold on any longer. His eyes dimmed, and he slumped to the ground, as if he had accepted his fate and waited for death to arrive. During this entire process, it wasn't just the spirit of poison that was secretly observing, but also the spirit of the sealed pagoda above him. The light phantom seemed to arch an eyebrow, a strange look in its eyes. But it couldn't help but feel a bit of anticipation. Perhaps he really could succeed? The black dot on the sealed pagoda had already rushed through the central region and arrived near the tip. But just as it was about to enter the tip, it finally came to a stop. The small square was filled with the sound of exhalation. It had been such a long time, and even though there were only several people, it gave off a surging feeling. But this time, no one had the mind to care about this at all. They rubbed their sore eyes, their hearts filled with apprehension. Without accident, Yaobin should be undergoing the final test right now. If he succeeded, he would become the master of the sealed pagoda. The 13th branch of the demonic path, the myriad poison sect, would be re-established, and he would become one of the strongest powerhouses in the world. In terms of their hearts, whether it was because of the dark side of human nature or because the treasures belonged to the black demon sect, none of them hoped that Yaobin would succeed. But these thoughts lingered in their hearts. They couldn't say them out loud. This was because everyone was well aware that the sect master needed to borrow Yao Bin's hand to resolve the hidden dangers in his body. If he failed in the process of recognizing a master, all that awaited him was death. This was a result that the sect master didn't want to see. Tai Chinxiu was expressionless, but deep in his heart, he was shaking. From the moment Yao Bin entered the sealed pagoda, he had felt that things had spiraled out of his control. But as he watched helplessly on as Yao Bin rushed all the way to the peak of the sealed pagoda, he still found it hard to believe. Before, Tai Chinxiu only had a 50% chance that Yao Bin would be able to resolve his hidden dangers. But now, after witnessing Yao Bin's strength, he was at least 80% sure he would succeed. He suddenly felt a bit of regret. Perhaps if his methods had been a bit gentler and he hadn't forced Yao Bin too much, things wouldn't have reached this step. But now it was clearly too late. Looking at the peak of the sealed pagoda and the black that had stopped for a long time, Tai Chinchio had an incomparably complex look in his eyes. Should he hope that Yao Bin would succeed or fail? The spirit of poison was certain that the human that had rushed in had been completely corroded by poison. His aura was weakening and his life fluctuations were becoming increasingly low. Without accident, he would soon die. Then his body would rot and dissolve before being absorbed by the earth, becoming a part of his body. But this wasn't a result that he wanted to see. Since many years ago, the spirit of the sealed pagoda had been in a half-dead state. But even now, it was still perfectly fine, still suppressing the spirit of poison. The spirit of poison knew that there would be a day when he would be able to escape. But he wasn't sure when that day would come. Since the birth of his will, tens of thousands of years had passed. After being imprisoned for such a long time, the spirit of poison's heart had grown increasingly cruel. The spirit of poison's desire for freedom had already surpassed everything else. But he was still cautious and chose to temporarily wait and see. This was because in the spirit of poison's understanding, there had never been a single flaw in the sealed pagoda that he could use. But now, the spirit of poison was well aware that he had to make a decision. Should he watch this human die, or should he immediately seize his body and rush out of the imprisonment of the sealed pagoda? At the bottom of the pit, Qin Yu was barely breathing. His soul space was completely clean, without a single trace of poison able to corrode it. As for his mortal body, he only needed a single thought to swallow up all the poison. With the powerful regenerative abilities of the demon body, he would soon be able to recover. So although this situation seemed terrifying, the truth was that it didn't harm Qin Yu too much. He was waiting for the spirit of poison to seize his body. Without warning, a black liquid gushed out from the bottom of the pit, instantly submerging Qin Yu. Endless black energy crazily seeped into Qin Yu's body. The seizing had begun. In the end, the spirit of poison wasn't able to suppress the desire for freedom in his heart. Moreover, he couldn't feel any threatening aura from this dying human. Perhaps the spirit of the sealed pagoda had prepared some scheme, but the spirit of poison didn't fear it. One was like the sun high in the sky, and the other was like a dying sun. The disparity between the two wasn't something that could be filled with schemes. Thus, the spirit of poison attacked. Once he started, he wouldn't look back. He wanted to complete control of this mortal body in the shortest time possible, and then use his absolute strength to crush the sealed pagoda scheme. Everything proceeded smoothly. This mortal body was filled with poison and was extremely suitable for the spirit of poison to fuse with. The aura of the soul was incomparably weak, like a candle flickering in the cold winter wind, about to be extinguished in the next moment. The spirit of poison smiled. This was normal. Even if he didn't deliberately target it, the aura of poison was enough to cause a life soul to wither and die. In that case, it would send this lowly, pitiful, and innocent human to death. It would devour his soul and obtain some of his memories. Only then would it be able to perfectly control this fleshly body and walk under the sun in the outside world. Sun, this familiar yet strange word had tumbled through the spirit of poison's heart countless times. Now he finally had the chance to bathe in it. It would surely be extremely warm. A black aura surged into his soul space. Then, in the next moment, an icy cold arrived without warning. The spirit of poison's eyes widened, filled with panic and disbelief. All of his strength had been thoroughly suppressed at this moment. This was impossible. Shua, at the bottom of the pit, Qin Yu opened his eyes and smiled. Nothing is impossible. He stretched out his arms. Since I've invited you to enter my trap, then let's begin. Cracks appeared in the void before collapsing inwards. The phantom of the little blue lamp arrived above Qin Yu's head. The deep blue light was pure and transparent, like the most peak and perfect jade in the world. Its arrival represented the little blue lamp's all-out attack. Bang! The entire black continent that floated deep within the sea of poison suddenly trembled. Then, loud rumbling sounds erupted from deep within the earth. It was like countless thick tentacles were ruthlessly stabbing into the earth, wildly swallowing up the energy contained within. Endless black liquid wildly gathered from all directions. The moment it touched Qin Yu's body, it vanished from sight. His right index finger shined with a dazzling light. Runes began to appear, spreading upwards from his fingertip. No! The spirit of poison crazily roared. His will was born from poison, and he could disperse it at any time and reform it once more. But at this time, he had lost control of his will. He could only watch helplessly on as the strength of his main body was crazily sucked away. Rumble, rumble. Chapter 479. The spirit of the sealed pagoda was left dumbfounded. 50,000 years ago, the myriad poison sect had made a mistake, leading to the birth of the spirit of poison. The entire sect had suffered a backlash and was nearly annihilated before they were able to seal it in the sealed pagoda. Ever since then, the spirit of the sealed pagoda had been resisting it. Although it had suppressed the spirit of poison to this day, it was well aware of just how terrifying it was. Unlike the spirit of poison, whose strength continued to weaken with the passage of time, the spirit of poison's strength had been in a constant state of growth for tens of thousands of years. This was because, to the spirit of poison, all of the poisons within the sealed pagoda were nourishment for its growth. Yet, it was precisely this terrifying spirit of poison that would cause a great calamity once it escaped. Yet today it was actually defeated by an unremarkable little fellow. To the spirit of the sealed pagoda, this created an intense psychological impact. Its entire mind was in chaos. It had decided to go all out, but in the end it was useless. The spirit of poison, how did he get defeated? It wasn't just the spirit of the sealed pagoda that couldn't understand this. Even the spirit of poison that was desperately trying to steal his strength was shocked and enraged, completely confused. I was born from millions upon millions of poisons, and I inherited the destructive energy of heaven and earth. I will exercise the power of destruction, making all creatures in the world howl in grief. This is my destiny. But just as this poison spirit was born, a group of old bastards risked their lives to seal it. Then, another group of people unafraid of death sent it into the sealed pagoda, where it was imprisoned for tens of thousands of years. Wasn't he supposed to carry the destructive aura of heaven and earth? What about exercising the power of destruction? What happened to making all living beings in the world wail in pain? Madhurv asterisk Kerr. All right, the great Tao of heaven and earth still lacked one. Everything had its leeway and accidents. Even if the poison spirit was extremely unlucky and happened to encounter that one, tens of thousands of years of imprisonment and suppression should be enough, right? Just as he was about to escape, a human lad suddenly ran in. He looked around and did not seem to be a threat at all. This poison spirit was very cautious, but even so, he still fell into a trap. Was there any justice in this world? Are you going to let this poison be nimble? Could it be that my birth wasn't to punish all living beings in the world, but to bear the burden of endless sin and struggle and pain? Heaven and earth, RUF asterisk king blind. However, the spirit of poison quickly stopped roaring in his heart. This was because he discovered, to his horror, that a tenth of the poison that he had accumulated for tens of thousands of years had disappeared in a short period of time. Originally, he thought that his family's foundation was extremely deep, and if this kid devoured too much, he might just poison himself to death at any moment. Now, it didn't seem to be the case at all, and what terrified the spirit of poison the most was that this body's devouring speed didn't show any signs of slowing down. Could it be that he really wanted to swallow the spirit of poison whole? As this thought crossed his mind, the spirit of poison was dumbfounded. The evil spirit was originally suppressed by the heavens and earth, and it could not be born without a lucky coincidence. Only after it developed its own intelligence did it realize how difficult it was for it to appear. After being imprisoned for tens of thousands of years and being swallowed in a single day, how could the spirit of poison be willing to end up like this? Don't panic. As the saying goes, calamities live for 1,000 years. I, the poison spirit, am a calamity to heaven and earth. I will not die so easily. The spirit of poison's thoughts raced, and he quickly judged the current situation. Right now, there are only two paths in front of me. I can either surrender and beg for my life, or I can get my all. This human boy is sinister and cunning, and his thoughts are incomparably vicious. Since I have fallen into his hands, I am nothing more than a fish on the chopping block. How could he let me off so easily? It seems that there is only the second path. The spirit of poison's face was fierce, and his eyes were crazed. Don't you want to swallow me? Fine, then I will fulfill your wish. Let's see whether or not you have the appetite. Although he couldn't escape this mortal body, the spirit of poison still had a connection with his main body. At this time, as the spirit of poison went crazy, the black continent in the sea of poison began to tremble and twitch as if it were suffering from an epileptic fit. Rumble, rumble, the black continent collapsed and disintegrated. Endless black liquid surged out like a raging flood, gathering from all directions. In several blinks of an eye, it formed a black lake. The spirit of the sealed pagoda was panicked. It naturally understood that the spirit of poison was going all out, wanting to use endless poison to break through Qin Yu's swallowing ability. Once it succeeded, not only would it be able to escape its predicament, but it would even be able to take over Qin Yu's body and control the mysterious strength within him. With Qin Yu's cultivation, the reason he could restrain and suppress the spirit of poison was because he borrowed the strength of an external object. The spirit of the sealed pagoda didn't know what this external strength was, but it was well aware that once it obtained the spirit of poison, it would be like adding wings to a tiger. The consequences would be inconceivable. No, it had to help Qin Yu. It couldn't allow the spirit of poison to succeed. The light phantom formed by the spirit of the sealed pagoda hesitated for a moment. But in the next moment, this hesitation turned into determination. Its mission had always been to protect all life in the world. For this reason, it didn't hesitate to use its body as a sacrifice to suppress all poisons in the world. Today, for the sake of trillions of lives, what did it matter if it gave up its freedom? It lifted a hand and pointed between its eyebrows. The light phantom trembled and a rhombus crystal flew out. This crystal was formed from countless tiny facets and edges. It emitted a radiant divine light, and as it was refracted by these facets, it was beautiful to the point of being unimaginable. The spirit of the sealed pagoda took a deep breath. It pointed a finger downwards, and the rhombus crystal shot out like an arrow. It pierced through the layer of sealing light and shot straight towards the lake of black liquid. At this moment, the suppressed spirit of poison suddenly sensed something. Its eyes widened in disbelief, and it emitted an angry roar. Bang! With this roar, the entire lake of black liquid began to violently tumble about. The surface of the lake split open like a giant mouth that swallowed up the crystal. But this black liquid contained countless poisons, each drop able to kill thousands of lives. In front of this crystal, it was as fragile as true flowing water. With a dull sound, the mouth formed by the black liquid was directly pierced through by the crystal. It tore through the air, constantly emitting sounds similar to the sound of leather being torn apart. It was deep and heavy, carrying with it an indomitable momentum that shook the heart. The light phantom had a complex expression. Don't disappoint me. Whoosh! The crystal arrived between Qin Yu's eyebrows. Without hesitation, it fused into his flesh and blood, vanishing from sight. In the next moment, the crystal appeared in his soul space. The purple moon began to shine with a blinding light, a halo of purple light spreading out in all directions. The slumbering soul summoning bell also instinctively began to shake. Ringing sounds that only the soul could hear constantly reverberated through the air. Qin Yu was frightened. He thought that this was one of the spirit of poison's other killing moves. If the mysterious purple moon and soul-summoning bell were able to cause such a great commotion at the same time, it must be terrifying. But he soon discovered that although the purple moon shined brightly and the soul-summoning bell rang without end, they didn't attack at all. Rather, they were like peacocks spreading their tails. This wasn't the right way to put it. This was because Qin Yu clearly wasn't the one who could cause them to spread their tails. It was more accurate to say that the purple moon and soul-summoning bell felt a threat from this crystal. They instinctively released their might to warn others that they weren't to be trifled with. This left Qin Yu pleasantly surprised. The origins of the purple moon were a mystery, but he was well aware of how precious the soul-summoning bell was. It seemed that this crystal was in existence on the same level as the soul-summoning bell. But how could such a precious treasure appear in his soul space for no reason? After a moment of hesitation, Qin Yu's soul reached out a hand. Without any resistance, the crystal fell into his palm. In an instant, the aura of his soul was branded into the crystal. Then, countless pieces of information flowed into his mind from the crystal. This information was so vast that even with Qin Yu's current soul cultivation, he felt his head spin. It took him a long time to recover. Qin Yu shook his head and rubbed between his eyebrows. He looked through the information that entered his mind, and a look of astonishment flashed on his face. Then, it turned into pleasant surprise. This was truly an unexpected harvest. The information that came from the crystal could be called an incomparably long memory. From the moment he was born, it continued until today. This was the memory of the sealed pagoda. Looking at the crystal in his hand, Qin Yu's eyes brightened. He hadn't even taken the spirit of poison yet, but he never imagined that his goal this time would already be achieved. The sealed pagoda had taken the initiative to recognize a master. And, to be more accurate, since the birth of the sealed pagoda, this was the first time that it had truly recognized a master. This was the so-called supreme, inherited treasure of the Myriad Poison sect. Strictly speaking, for countless years, the Myriad Poison sect had only obtained the approval of the sealed pagoda to be able to use its strength. Both sides had a relationship of equals, and the sealed pagoda even had the initiative. But now, it had chosen to serve Qin Yu as its master on its own initiative. Of course, through the memories of the sealed pagoda, Qin Yu easily knew what the true reason for doing this was. Thus, while he was pleasantly surprised, he didn't feel any pride at all. Rather, there was only admiration. Sealed pagoda. So you were such a sealed pagoda. Sealed pagoda, I know you can hear me. I, Qin Yu, guarantee you that I will not use the power of the sealed pagoda to do anything that goes against the will of the heavens and earth. Otherwise, you can break all ties with me. The sealed pagoda's spirit's voice echoed out. I hope you can keep your word. Otherwise, even if I vanish from the world, I will not back down. Qin Yu knew its memories, so he knew that these weren't empty words. If the sealed pagoda said these words, then it would surely do them. But his reply didn't contain any hesitation. Of course, I will wait and see. The sealed pagoda went straight to the point. Now, I will mobilize all of my strength and pour it into your body to help you suppress the strength of the spirit of poison. The crystal shined, but in the next moment, it was stopped by Qin Yu. He coughed and rubbed his nose. In truth, even if the spirit of poison tries to go all out, it's useless to me. Facts spoke louder than words. Qin Yu relaxed his mind and allowed the sealed pagoda's spirit to sense his current state. As for the little blue lamp, although he didn't know how it did it, whether it was his partner's soul spirity, undying, or the sealed pagoda spirit, none of them were able to sense its existence. The sealed pagoda fell into a long silence. After a long time, it said with a bit of hesitation, "Myriad poison body." Qin Yu thought about it. There were records of a terrifying physique that could swallow myriad poisons and eat them as food. He nodded. You can also understand it that way. The sealed pagoda fell silent once more. Qin Yu knew that Qin Shu and the sealed pagoda were depressed right now. They originally held onto the lofty ideal of rescuing the common people of the world and sacrifice themselves. But who would have thought that in the end, it would all be superfluous and he wouldn't even have a chance to do anything? In other words, he had sacrificed himself for nothing. If you don't want to, I could try to undo our master recognition relationship. Cough, cough. I know it might be a bit difficult, but if we try a bit more, perhaps one day we will be able to. The sealed pagoda quietly said, "If you hadn't looked through my memories and said these words, I might have been moved. But you clearly know that once I recognize a master, I will no longer have any chance of freedom." These words are a bit too shameless. Chinyu was embarrassed to the max, but he thickened his skin and didn't speak, as if he were tacitly agreeing. What nonsense! The treasure had already been delivered to him, and he had already eaten it. Not to mention that he really couldn't undo the master recognition relationship. But even if he could, did he really have to spit it out? That was purely a fairy tale. "I am tired. I will leave the rest to you." After the sealed pagoda finished speaking, there was no more movement. It was clear that it had gone to lick away the sorrow in its heart. Chinyu naturally didn't have any objections. He had taken all the advantages, so how could he not allow the sealed pagoda to have a little bit of emotion? In any case, the rice had already been cooked into porridge. There would come a time when it would accept reality. Originally, he thought that he would be able to control the sealed pagoda and become the true master of the myriad poison sect, obtaining a status that the Black Demon sect had no choice but to treat with respect, and then he would be able to participate in the Demon Ascension Gate. But in reality, his harvests were unimaginably great. The sealed pagoda that had already recognized him as its master was extremely depressed. There is no need to mention the spirit of myriad poison who was being tossed and turned by Chinyu as he used the star-absorbing great art over and over again. Chapter 480. The spirit of poison's desperate attempt to self-destruct his body to gather a massive amount of poison was ruthless to the extreme. But to Chinyu, it was useless. Of course, saying this might be a bit shameless and self-flattering, because the truth was that the spirit of poison had made a mistake. In front of the little blue lamp, his little bit of skill simply couldn't stir up any waves. The so-called poison immunity wasn't something that could be broken through with just quantity. Of course, the little blue lamp might have a limit to what it could withstand, but this wasn't enough to worry about. The black liquid lake tumbled about. Chinyu was like a boulder at the bottom of the lake. No matter how it raged around him, his figure didn't waver in the least. In the dark nothingness above his head, the little blue lamp's halo was as deep as the sea. All of the surging poisons that entered Chinyu's body were instantly suppressed and poured into his right index finger. After this finger swallowed and contained a massive amount of poison today, it was clearly undergoing some marvelous transformation. For instance, on the surface of his flesh and blood, there were increasingly complex and mysterious runes that appeared. As Chinyu saw them, a term automatically popped up in his mind: rules. Although he found this to be absurd and unbelievable, after confirming it over and over again, Chinyu determined that this wasn't a hallucination. These runes that appeared on the surface of his finger were indeed the omnipresent yet untouchable rules that existed between the heavens and earth. It was just that in Chinyu's understanding, he didn't know which boundary of cultivation could directly manifest the rules onto a cultivator's body. It had to be known that he was already at the Blue Sea realm, and his true combat strength was terrifying. Even in the land of divinity and demons, he could be considered a top character. Even if he didn't know what these rules that appeared on his finger were, even if he didn't need to think to know that they were extraordinary things. Chinyu's intuition told him that he had struck it rich this time. So, when the spirit of poison discovered that nearly half of the poison in his body had been cleanly swallowed up by Chinyu like a black hole without any signs of choking, he truly panicked. He originally wanted to stuff this brat to death, but now it seemed that he had dug a hole for himself and then jumped in without hesitation. The truth was cruel, and the spirit of poison's heart was filled with tragedy. But he had no choice but to accept reality. Since the first path of risking his life and struggling wasn't working, then he had to hurry up and take the second path. Although freedom and dignity were important in the face of life or death, all of that had to stand to the side. I haven't really died yet. I'm standing under the sun, bathing in the light. How can I die? But what left the spirit of poison feeling a chill in his heart was that his begging wasn't exchanged for Qin Yu's hesitation at all. Qin Yu's swallowing actions were fierce and forceful, as if he wouldn't stop until he drank him dry and then burned his bones to ashes. As expected, I knew this kid was a vicious and merciless character. Unfortunately, this understanding was completely useless now. The spirit of poison only knew that if this continued, he would definitely die. 60%, 70%, 80%. The spirit of poison was born from the billions of poisons. There was no need to plunder all of the poisons. As long as the amount was reduced to a certain level, it would not be able to maintain itself, and its consciousness would collapse and disappear from the world. In his extreme fear, the spirit of poison's attitude became more and more submissive. At first, he said, "If you don't stop, I'll drag you down with me." Then he said, "Please stop. I'm willing to bow my head and submit." Then he said, "Spare me. I'll be willing to be ordered around in the future." In the end, his tears and snot flowed down. In order to survive, he would agree to anything. Unfortunately, for the current Qin Yu, the rules on his right index finger had appeared. Priority was greater than anything else. Everything the spirit of poison said was tossed to the back of his mind. As more and more poisons were absorbed, the markings on his finger became increasingly complete, revealing a strange sense of beauty. Qin Yu had a faint intuition that once this finger was completely restored, some incredible change would occur. He didn't know what it would be, but he was looking forwards to it. When the entire Black Lake was nearly dried up and the continent Qin Yu stood on was only 100 miles wide, his body trembled. Faint traces of warmth flowed out from his body and into his eyes. Then the world in front of him suddenly changed. Numerous afterimages were reflected in his eyes and covered the heavens and the earth before his eyes. When he looked into the distance, he noticed that these afterimages formed a circle of their own, and outside this circle was an even vaster illusory world that was boundless like a sea of stars in the sky. Qin Yu was enlightened. The circle he saw was the world within the sealed pagoda. As for the phantoms outside, they represented the entire land of divinity and demons. After a cultivator entered the divine soul realm, they could see the rules of the world and gradually borrow them, control them, and even change them in order to obtain an incomparably formidable strength. But this mostly depended on a powerful soul resonating with the world. But now, Qin Yu was able to use his own eyes to directly see the omnipresent strength of the rules of the world. What did this represent, and what sort of possibilities it contained? Qin Yu still didn't fully understand, but just thinking about it at this moment left him stirred up. After a moment of hesitation, Qin Yu lifted his right hand and gently brushed the void in front of him. His fingers were different from his other fingers. His longest index finger had a clear sense of touch. In the next moment, strong winds rose up between the heavens and earth. The void violently trembled and cracks tore through it. The entire world shook with it, creating a scene of destruction. The barrier of light that suppressed the spirit of poison was only able to resist for a breath of time before it was crushed to pieces by this vast strength. At this time, the sealed pagoda couldn't be bothered to lick the wounds in its heart. It angrily roared out, "Qin Yu, what are you doing?" In truth, what it was even more shocked about was, just how did you do this? Qin Yu's complexion paled. As he stood in this shaking, he absolutely didn't feel good. But the shock in his heart was even more intense than the sealed pagodas. He never imagined that just trying to move the rules in front of him would create such a terrifying scene, and even cause massive damage to the sealed pagoda. This was a wake-up call for Qin Yu. In the future, he absolutely couldn't casually move the phantoms of the rules that he didn't understand. Otherwise, he would be the first to suffer. "I'm sorry, I won't do it again," Qin Yu vaguely said. But the sealed pagoda didn't ask any further because it still hadn't emerged from its shock. "How'd you do it?" It couldn't help but ask this question. Qin Yu hesitated for a moment. He lifted up his finger that didn't seem abnormal at all. I only know that it was the spirit of poison's help. But as for the true reason, I don't know. His eyes flashed. However, I seem to have obtained an extraordinary ability. But as for the specifics, I still need to experiment a little more. The sealed pagoda refused without even thinking about it. Please leave before you experiment. Qin Yu revealed an apologetic expression. It isn't convenient to do it outside. But you can rest assured that I have full confidence that I won't cause too much of a commotion this time. The sealed pagoda hesitated again and again before reluctantly agreeing. But from its tone, it was clear it was worried. Qin Yu cupped his hands together in thanks. He looked down at the slowly disappearing black liquid, as well as the spirit of poison that was playing dead at his feet. A cold smile curved his lips. His 5 fingers swept through the void. His index finger stirred the world rules. But this time, what he stirred was the slaughter rules of the path of metal that Qin Yu completely controlled. Whoosh! A radiant crescent-shaped, silver-white light fell from above. It was like a sword that held up the heavens. The black continent beneath his feet, or perhaps it would be more accurate to call it an island, was directly cut in half. Ah! With a pitiful scream, black liquid flowed out from the 2 islands. But just as a part of it appeared, it was immediately annihilated, as if it were destroyed by some extreme strength. The remnant parts fused together, forming the appearance of the spirit of poison that Qin Yu had first seen. Unfortunately, his handsome face was now filled with fear and pain, without any of his previous elegance. "My lord, please spare me. Please spare me." The spirit of poison's greatest technique was poison, but this was clearly useless against Qin Yu. Moreover, after experiencing Qin Yu's fierceness just now, his heart nearly exploded. All he could think of was that this brat was playing the pig to eat the tiger, and that his true identity was definitely some old freak of nature. No wonder his heart was so black. No wonder his hands were so ruthless if he didn't hurry up and beg for mercy. If he waited any longer, he feared he wouldn't even have the chance to do so. Qin Yu's eyes flashed with pleasant surprise. It really was like this. If he galvanized the path of metal and caused the rules around him to change, then he could simply move his index finger. Moreover, the power seemed to be even stronger than when he attacked with his full strength. Didn't this mean that as long as he comprehended more rules in the future, he could casually move them and erupt with a might no less than the supernatural powers themselves? Moreover, the most terrifying point was that Qin Yu only needed to move his finger in order to accomplish all of this without any loss. To a certain degree, Qin Yu had great potential in the future. He could become a mobile fortress and one that didn't need to cool down or rest. His endurance was freakish to the point of leaving others in despair. Perhaps it was time for him to give himself a domineering and mighty nickname. For instance, Qin Fortress, Enduring Qin, Qin Ritian. Qin Yu shook his head, shaking off these idiotic thoughts. But he couldn't help but grin, revealing a brilliant smile. Then, a tempting thought popped up in his mind. It was so tempting that he didn't even have the mind to pay attention to the bowing spirit of poison. He impatiently asked the little blue lamp, but unfortunately, the results weren't good. The little blue lamp had said many things. The general meaning was that in its current state, it could only help Qin Yu change a tiny part of his physique, a single finger. Most of it was just washing up and sleeping. There was no need to dream about it. But Qin Yu still managed to learn some important information from the little blue lamp. For instance, Great Tao Body. This should be the name that Qin Yu's finger that was covered by the rules should be called. Unfortunately, his Great Tao Body was severely damaged, and from his entire body, only a single finger was qualified. It was rumored that after the Calamity, Immortal Realm was the Great Tao Realm. At this level, an existence could see through all things in the world and control all rules in their hands. Perhaps the Great Tao Body was related to this boundary? Moreover, the little blue lamp's words meant that in its current state, it could only help Qin Yu form a Great Tao Body with a single finger. Did this mean that as its state continued to rise in the future, more parts of Qin Yu's body could be transformed into a great Tao body? Qin Yu's thoughts surged. It was only after a long time that he calmed down. Although the results weren't satisfactory, he had no reason to complain about his current harvests. Then, Qin Yu discovered that the spirit of poison was kneeling on the ground, trembling and on the verge of collapse. His thoughts raced, and he immediately understood the current situation. After transforming into a great Tao body, the index finger of his right hand could still contain poison. But the spirit of poison strength was at most 10% of its peak. Even if he swallowed all of it, he wouldn't be able to increase it any further. If he left it behind, if he didn't know, he would have to ask an expert. Qin Yu said, "Sealed pagoda, should I leave behind the spirit of poison?" The sealed pagoda was silent for several breaths of time. Then it said, "Master possesses an ability comparable to the myriad poison body, so there is no need for you to fear the spirit of poison's growth. Leaving it behind is the best choice. This is because the spirit of poison can absorb the poisons of the world and nurture all sorts of poisons to grow. In the future, it might be helpful to master." Qin Yu's first thought was that he would have to rely on the spirit of poison to form his great Tao body. This was simply an endless source of supply. There was nothing else to say. He had to leave it behind. "Spirit of poison, since it wasn't easy for you to be born and you have helped me, I will spare your life today. In the future, you can stay in the world of the sealed pagoda and work hard to condense poisons. I guarantee that as long as you perform well, you might be able to regain your freedom in the future." The spirit of poison kowtowed again and again without any conditions. Only the heavens knew what sort of mental torture he had just experienced. To be able to live on was already a blessing from the heavens. How could he dare to speak any more nonsense? Chapter 481. The black dot at the peak of the sealed pagoda had vanished, and Yao Bin hadn't come out. Everyone on the square was well aware of what this meant. The chief elder heaved a sigh of relief in his heart, and then he sneered inwardly. So what if you have some tricks up your sleeves? In the end, he had lost his life. If you want to become the leader of the myriad poison sect in a single bound, you should consider whether or not you are fated to do so. Of course, these emotions had to be hidden carefully so that the sect leader wouldn't notice them. Otherwise, he would definitely remember it. The atmosphere was heavy. Just like Chief Elder, no matter what they were thinking, everyone's faces were incredibly serious, carrying a type of solemnity as if they were thinking about life. After all, there was no idiot that could obtain his current status in the Black Demon sect. Tai Chinchou gently sighed. There was regret, loss, and also a bit of joy. Yao Bin should be the person most likely to obtain the approval of the sealed pagoda in the last tens of thousands of years. The chief elder bowed, but in the end he failed. He hesitated for a moment before saying, "Sovereign, Yao Bin is dead. How will we explain this to the Feng family?" Tai Chinchou was expressionless. "Inform the Feng family that the person who killed Feng Changjing has already been beheaded." He turned and walked away, his footsteps heavy. But this had nothing to do with Qin Yu's death. What the Lord Sect Master worried about was that with Yao Bin dead, what would happen to the hidden dangers within his body? The chief elder and the others bowed and sent them off. As they stood up, their gazes fell onto the sealed pagoda, and they simultaneously snorted. To dare covet the supreme treasure of their sect, even death cannot wipe out their crimes. This old man still lacks a courtyard. Yao Bin's residence is mine. The fourth demon hunting ground, this old man wants it. The one who spoke was Tianjun. As the sect leader's master, although his cultivation was not considered to be at the peak, his status was extremely high. Everyone had to give face to the sect master. Furthermore, in order to obtain the fourth demon hunting ground, Tianjun had already bribed everyone. It was just that he did not expect Yao Bin to be so domineering, causing him to be in such a sorry state. It was reasonable for him to take it back now. Recently, many people have given Yao Bin lavish gifts. Now that he has been executed by the sect, his belongings should be confiscated. The chief elder's words caused everyone's eyes to light up. As expected, the chief elder had some skill. With just one sentence, he confirmed Yao Bin's status as a criminal. Everything else would be easy to handle. Everyone said a few more words and came to a general consensus. One by one, they left with smiles on their faces. With Yao Bin's death, everyone was able to eat the meat and drink the soup. Indeed, it was good that he had died. Because of Qin Yu's reckless actions, the small world within the sealed pagoda had been damaged. In a good mood, he offered to help repair the cracks in the small world. Towards this, the sealed pagoda chose to acquiesce. This was because it wanted to know just what method Qin Yu used to be able to directly touch upon the rules of the world. In its incomparably long life, it had never encountered something like this. After Qin Yu investigated, he discovered that the small world within the sealed pagoda was in an even worse situation than he had imagined. Perhaps because it had suppressed the spirit of poison for tens of thousands of years, the small world had been severely damaged. The only reason it hadn't collapsed was because of the sealed pagoda's incredible toughness. When Qin Yu obtained the sealed dimension ring and obtained the small world beyond the distant nothingness, he was powerless to do anything about its condition. But now that he had a partial Great Tao body, and because of certain reasons his eyes could clearly see the rules, repairing the small world was incomparably simple for him. This was because the existence of a small world was established upon the support of the rules. The foundation of the sealed pagoda's small world still existed. As long as the chaotic rules were restored, it would be able to restore itself. At that time, it would be able to automatically absorb heaven and earth's spiritual strength and slowly repair itself. There was no need to elaborate on the process. In short, the result was that the sealed pagoda looked at Qin Yu with an even more dignified expression, as if wondering why he was so amazing. All right, the rest will depend on time to slowly restore itself. I still have important matters to attend to outside, so I won't stay any longer. I will send Master out. Space twisted and Qin Yu's figure vanished from sight. In the next moment, he appeared in an empty square. With a smile on his lips and the respectful tone of the sealed pagoda, Qin Yu was very satisfied. If he could completely subdue this supreme treasure, he would be able to use it with ease in the future. Of course, Qin Yu absolutely wouldn't allow the sealed pagoda to do something that angered the heavens and angered the people. Otherwise, with its temperament, it would rather die in glory than live in dishonor. He had to pay attention to this point. If he wasn't careful, he might stir up some trouble in the future. Qin Yu swept his eyes around, a look of surprise on his face. Tai Chinchio and the others weren't waiting here. Could it be that they were so confident that he wouldn't succeed? But the result would likely disappoint them. Qin Yu looked up at the night sky and then turned to walk towards his dwelling. Once news of his return spread out, Tai Chinchio and the others would naturally rush over to inquire about it. However, the Black Demon sect tonight seemed a bit different from the rest. The air was filled with restlessness and a deep sense of sorrow and indignation. What was going on here? The puzzlement in Qin Yu's heart was soon answered. He stood on the grass that had just been repaired and was now trampled all over. He looked at the brightly lit hall not too far away and saw a group of vicious Punishment Division cultivators surrounding it so tightly that not even a drop of water could pass through. Even further outside was a large crowd of Black Demon sect cultivators. Many of them had pale complexions and their bodies swayed. I knew it. I knew that surname Yao wouldn't have a good end. He didn't listen to me and spat out the meat that was in his mouth after so much difficulty. He even sent it back 3 times as much in order to obtain Grandmaster Yao's favor. Pooey. Not too far away, a voice shouted out through clenched teeth. This voice immediately resonated with the crowd. Countless people began to spit out their grievances. I barely managed to gather enough gifts this morning and sent them over with a smile on my face. But the result is like this. You bastard, give me back my gifts. That was 10 years of my savings. Who dares to be more miserable than me? In order to obtain that surname Yao's favor, I borrowed spirit stones to send gifts. But before I left, the punishment division people arrived. If it weren't for the fact that I have friends in the punishment division, I fear I would have been taken as someone surnamed Yao and arrested. The cultivator had a bitter expression. Needless to say, these were black demon sect cultivators that had taken advantage of Chinyu. Now that the situation had taken a turn for the worse, they wanted to remedy the situation. Chinyu's complexion was strange. It seemed as if something had gone wrong somewhere. At this time, shouldn't the entire black demon sect be carefully serving him? Chinyu swept his eyes over Tuba and Tutu, who were pressed to the side. His eyes narrowed and a gloomy light flashed in them. It seemed that his fingers were about to cramp again. As for why they would cramp, it was because they received spirit stones. He had just scraped a piece of land from the black demon sect, and now another opportunity had arrived. Chinyu felt that if he didn't put in a bit more effort this time, he would be letting down the intelligence of these people. As long as things started, it was fine. There was no need to wait until something really happened. This was because with Chinyu's current status, he could do whatever he wanted as long as he had an excuse. Chinyu took several steps forwards and then turned back. He stepped into the shadows and patted the figure that was immersed in grief and indignation, unable to extricate himself. "What are you doing? I don't have any spirit stones. I am nothing but a pauper right now. Fellow Taoist, there's no need to be sad. The gifts you sent are definitely useful." These words sounded comforting, but as this scene fell into his ears, it was no different from a slap in the face. He couldn't endure this. The black demon sect cultivator clenched his teeth. He wanted to see just which blind fool dared to joke around with him and then spit on him. But when he looked up, he found himself rooted to the ground. Although the light here was dim, cultivators had excellent eyesight. He could clearly see that the faint youth in front of him wasn't that surname, Yao, already executed? Damn, are you playing with me? As he thought about how his previous complaints had definitely been heard, and how this Grandmaster Yao was a ruthless and vengeful person, his mood wildly fluctuated. Before he could say anything, the black demon sect cultivator's eyes rolled back, and he fell to the ground. I'm too sad. I also want to faint. Only then can my worries be resolved. All my years of savings have been wiped out. If it were me, I would also want to die. That surname, Yao, has harmed so many people. Chinyu had already turned around and was walking towards the lights. Many black demon sect cultivators in front of him felt as if they had been ruthlessly pushed away. They staggered to the sides, all of them enraged. But when they turned around, they were like hens that had been grabbed by the neck, unable to make a single sound. One of the black demon sect cultivators clearly didn't understand what was happening. He opened his mouth to curse, but before he could make a sound, he was kicked to the ground by someone beside him. "You bastard, you want to die? Don't drag us down with you." The punishment division cultivators that had blocked off the surroundings soon realized that something was wrong. Two people walked forwards with gloomy expressions. They wanted to see just who had the guts to stir up trouble here. But before they could approach, a great strength struck them. With two loud bangs, the two people were sent tumbling backwards, their bodies plowing through the grass. "You bastard." Just as they spoke, they swallowed their words. The punishment division cultivator paled, and a cold sweat dripped down his forehead. Bystanders didn't know the inside story, but the entire punishment division knew that surname Yao hadn't been executed at all. Rather, he had died during the master recognition process of the sealed pagoda, and now, who could tell them just where these rumors came from? This little one greets Grandmaster Yao under the curtain of night, beneath the lights. Chinyu was expressionless. His eyes were cold to the point of being frightening. Of course, most of this was a disguise. But in order to open his mouth, this sort of performance was necessary. After all, no one would complain about having too many spirit stones. In particular, after experiencing the Four Seasons City auction house, Chinyu's interest in spirit stones had instinctively increased. Grandmaster, Tuba and Tutu were extremely excited. They coldly swept their eyes around, as if saying, "You bunch of idiots, I already knew you would suffer misfortune. How could the methods of our highness be something you can imagine?" This time, If the Black Demon Sect's land wasn't dug up, then I would change my surname to yours. These two simple and honest fellows had the same thoughts as their master. It could be said that like master, like servant. Cheney nodded. Have you been wronged? Tuba's eyes turned, and he fell to his knees. He looked up to the heavens and cried out in sorrow. Grandmaster, this subordinate is incompetent. The 1,000,000,000 spirit stones you gave me, the 1,000,000 spirit plants, and even the tribe's supreme treasure were all taken away by others. Tudu's reaction was a beat slower, but he soon understood what he had to do. The old patriarch left them with me, and the spirit stones for Grandmaster's daily expenses have also been lost. There's also the precious beast blood you ordered me to collect these past years. The scene became even more deathly silent. Everyone's eyes widened in shock. How could a person be like this? What bullshit 1,000,000,000 spirit stones, 1,000,000 spirit plants, and what tribe's supreme treasure? The last time they were divided up, there wasn't even a single thing left, so how could there be such things? This was clearly extortion. But even though they knew this, no one dared to say anything. They only looked at the palace with sorrow in their eyes. They thought to themselves, just who could be so blind as to have such thoughts? This time, they really wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. Chinyu's eyes revealed a bit of surprise. In the infinite realm, Tuba and Tuta didn't have such thoughts. It could be seen that the outside world tempered them more. Not bad, not bad. Chinyu vaguely gave the two of them a look of appreciation. Then his complexion paled. Every word that came out from between his clenched teeth released a cold chill. Speak, who sent you here? The punishment division cultivator shivered. This, Chinyu's eyes turned cold. I will only ask once. If you don't answer, there's no need to answer. It's Elder Way. The punishment division cultivator screamed out loud. As he spoke, he fell to the ground. Although he was acting on orders, if he said these words, it would be hard for him not to be retaliated against in the future. His life was finished. Chinyu frowned. He finally found information about this Elder Way from Yao Bin's memories. He was ranked 4th in the sect and was a great figure. Yes, only by having a high enough status would he be able to squeeze out enough benefits. Wei Changfeng, come out. Chinyu faced the depths of the Black Demon sect and let out a deep breath. His voice was like a thunderclap, billowing between the heavens and earth, raging and roaring. In an instant, his voice resounded through the entire Black Demon sect. Countless cultivators revealed looks of shock. Just who was it that dared to be so disrespectful and call out the name of the sect's 4th elder? But it was clear that there were many people who immediately recognized Qin Yu's identity as soon as they heard his voice. Impossible. The chief elder violently stood up, his face filled with shock. He clearly died already. When the black dot on the sealed pagoda disappeared, that meant that the cultivator that entered had already died. This was the conclusion that the 137 cultivators of the Black Demon sect had reached with their lives. But now, this conclusion had clearly been overturned. Since Yao Bin hadn't died, didn't that mean that he had already completed the sealed pagoda's recognition process? The chief elder's mind buzzed like a herd of wild horses running out of a pen. His thoughts were a complete mess. However, these old and experienced people were definitely shrewd enough. In the time it took to breathe, he suppressed the shock in his heart. Shua, with a single step, the chief elder vanished from sight. But there was someone faster than him. Tai Chinchio looked at Qin Yu's expressionless face. His complexion was brilliant. Astonishment, excitement, ecstasy, bewilderment. It was hard to imagine that a single expression contained so many complex emotions. Grandmaster Yao, it's great that you're fine. I've been grieving for you for a long time today. As Tai Chinchio spoke, he strode forwards, his face full of concern. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. Secmaster, thank you for your concern. Tai Chinchio wanted to say something, but hesitated. Qin Yu pretended not to see him. His eyes fell onto the chief elder's shocked and lost expression. It looks like the chief elder is disappointed that I'm still alive. The chief elder squeezed out a smile. It's nothing. I'm just too surprised. This was clearly a fright. But now, before he could figure out Qin Yu's current situation, he didn't dare to speak as coldly as before. If by any chance, then this brat really would soar into the heavens. More and more black demon sect masters arrived. As they saw Qin Yu, they all looked as if they had seen a ghost. Tianjun was one of them. His heart shivered. He quickly took out his handphone and secretly sent out a message. The fourth monster hunting ground, or whatever it is, it has nothing to do with me at all. If someone were to say, "Why did my people go over today?" What nonsense. Of course he was there to help Grandmaster Yao guard the monster hunting ground, lest someone take advantage of Grandmaster Yao's absence to secretly hunt. Yes, that was it. As for the other old fellows that had eaten until their mouths were dripping with oil, their complexions paled. As they regretted their actions, they did the same thing. They hurried to clarify things. Even if they couldn't, they had to reduce the implications to the minimum. If they couldn't, they could throw out a scapegoat and say that it was someone else's decision. It was always better to be incompetent than to directly argue with Yao Bin. In particular, they didn't know what his current situation was. There was nothing wrong with being careful. Seeing more and more people arrive, the person involved, Elder Wei, was like a turtle hiding in its shell, unwilling to show himself. Qin Yu was expressionless, but his eyes flashed with a dangerous light. Does Elder Wei wish for me to personally invite him? The chief elder coughed. He certainly knew what was going on. Wei Changfeng clearly didn't dare to show himself. Grandmaster Yao, is there some misunderstanding today? Elder Wei is currently in seclusion. If you have any matters, you can speak to me. His meaning was, tell me what you want me to do, and I will do my best to help you. Qin Yu faintly smiled. Does the chief elder want to take responsibility for this matter for Elder Wei? The chief elder wanted to say yes. After all, Wei Changfeng was one of his people, and he was very capable in his daily work. If he could control a palace, would he dare to make such an outrageous demand? But looking at Qin Yu's expression, his heart raced. He swept his eyes over several black demon sect cultivators who were wildly winking at him. The chief elder thought to himself that this was a close call. He had almost fallen for this brat's tricks. Cough, cough. How about Grandmaster Yao first tell me your request? Qin Yu lightly said, simple. Make up for my losses, and this matter can be considered settled. The chief elder cautiously asked, what did Grandmaster Yao lose? Qin Yu waved his hand. Tuba and Tutu stepped forwards, their footsteps shaking the ground. They repeated what they just said. Chapter 482. What nonsense! A furious shout resounded through the world. Wei Changfeng, who had turned into a coward, could no longer care about hiding. He appeared before everyone in a flustered and exasperated manner. What nonsense! If he didn't come out to defend himself, and everyone tacitly agreed to his actions, then he would be the one to die. At that time, besides hanging himself, there wouldn't be a second path for him to take. Serene Yao, I only took one of your palaces. Is there a need to do something like this? Thinking of this, the originally restless Wei Changfeng glared at Qin Yu, a look of deep hatred on his face. Qin Yu remained expressionless. Elder Wei occupied my palace, so shouldn't I be the one angry? Wei Changfeng's expression froze. With just a few words, his attempt to gain the upper hand and momentum had been completely shattered. The chief elder said, Grandmaster Yao, this is a misunderstanding. But no matter what, Elder Wei was in the wrong first, so it is natural for him to compensate you, Qin Yu nodded. Chief Elder also thinks that I should ask for compensation. Then, I ask Elder Wei to return double what you took. After being interrupted, the chief elder's field of vision darkened. This surname, Yao didn't play his cards according to common sense. His original plan was to ask Qin Yu to quote a reasonable price. No one here was an idiot. Do you really think you can get away with opening your mouth wider than the heavens? Wei Changfeng clenched his teeth. Grandmaster Yao, I am willing to pay 1,000,000 spirit stones as compensation. As for anything else, I cannot comply. I only occupied your palace, and I didn't even live there for a day. To compensate you with 1,000,000 spirit stones, in Elder Wei's opinion, this was already a loss that made his heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys ache. Qin Yu remained expressionless. Wei Changfeng, do you want to swallow all my wealth and treasures? Grandmaster Yao, you are going too far. The scene fell deathly silent. Qin Yu hesitated, as if he were in a difficult position. The chief elder's eyes brightened. If Yao Bin really obtained the approval of the sealed pagoda and summoned it, then who would dare to say a single word of nonsense? Could it be that he hadn't succeeded? As soon as this thought appeared, it wildly multiplied in his mind. Yes, that must be it. Although I don't know how that surname, Yao managed to survive that calamity, he still hasn't become the master of the sealed pagoda. His arrogant actions today must be to frighten everyone in my black demon sect. As long as Wei Changfeng bows his head in fear, no one will dare to stop him from entering the Demon Ascension Gate. In order to join the Demon Ascension Gate, Qin Yu had even dared to make the sealed pagoda recognize him as its master. If he dared to do something as dangerous as risking his life, then what was so special about putting on a show today? Yao Bin knew that the sect master needed his help to cure the hidden injuries in his body. Even if the matter were to be exposed, he would only lose face in front of everyone, and his life would not be in danger. A chance of losing face in exchange for today's rich benefits, and also the chance to participate in the Demon Ascension Gate. This could be called an extremely good deal. Thinking of this, the chief elder was almost certain that Yao Bin was deliberately mystifying things. It was just that he didn't expect Wei Changfeng to be so greedy. Making him pay such a terrifying amount of compensation was worse than killing him. But luckily, Wei Changfeng was greedy enough and was willing to disregard everything for spirit stones. If it were anyone else, perhaps Yao Bin really might have succeeded. After determining that Qin Yu was a paper tiger, the chief elder calmly said, "Although 1,000,000 spirit stones isn't much, Elder Wei hasn't harmed Grandmaster Yao's interests at all. There is no harm in accepting it lest this matter blows up." The meaning behind his words was that this brat should know when to stop or else he wouldn't be able to back down. Tai Qianqiu revealed a surprised expression. He clearly didn't think the chief elder would be so bold. The Black Demon sect powerhouses that arrived all revealed looks of awe and admiration. However, everyone was quick-witted. Their thoughts raced, and they immediately realized what was going on. Could it be that the chief elder had discovered something? As they looked at the stage, their eyes brightened. Yao Bin's current silence was clearly the greatest flaw. If he had enough cards in his hand, he would have remained silent. It seemed that the matter of the sealed pagoda recognizing him as its master wasn't the same as what they had expected. But it was also because of this that it seemed reasonable. My Black Demon sect has existed for tens of thousands of years, and 137 of our ancestors have died here, yet we still haven't been able to accomplish this. How could this surname, Yao, accomplish it in a mere day? Weren't they thinking too highly of him? The atmosphere suddenly changed. There was less awe in everyone's eyes, and more sneers, mockery, and even annoyance replaced it. "Surname Yao, you've played us in circles. You're really fierce." Wei Changfeng trembled. At this time, he finally regained his composure. As he thought about how he had exposed this paper tiger in front of him, he couldn't help but straighten his back. "Yao Bin, accept the 1,000,000 spirit stones, and this matter will be settled. Otherwise, for your reckless actions today, as an elder of the sect, I will ask the sect master to severely punish you." The positions of offense and defense have been completely reversed. The dense crowd of Black Demon sect cultivators all revealed puzzled expressions. Grandmaster Yao was clearly enraged and had opened his lion's mouth to blackmail them. So how come the wind had changed in the blink of an eye? Where did Elder Wei's fearlessness come from? He actually began to directly threaten Qin Yu. He looked up at Wei Changfeng and sighed. "Originally, I didn't want to make a big deal out of this matter because of my relationship with the Black Demon sect. If you obediently compensated me and pretended that nothing had happened, then that would have been great. But what a pity my good intentions have been wasted. Since no one appreciates my kindness, why should I make things difficult for myself?" A sharp light flashed in his eyes. "Wei Changfeng, since you refuse to realize your mistakes, then don't blame me for being ruthless." He lifted a hand and grasped forward. Everything was calm, without the least bit of disturbance. Elder Wei's complexion was cold and gloomy. "Grandmaster Yao, it seems that you are the only one who refuses to realize your mistakes." Qin Yu had an indifferent expression. "Is that so?" Before his voice fell, the entire Black Demon sect's entrance violently trembled. There was a loud rumbling sound that reverberated in all directions. Before everyone could be horrified and ask what was happening, a white light cut through the horizon and landed above Qin Yu's head. This small white pagoda was transparent like jade. It sprinkled down a warm light in the darkness, pure and warm. But at this moment, besides Tai Qianxiu and the other chief elders, as long as they had the qualifications to know what happened today, their complexions all changed. Across from the arrogant and threatening Wei Changfeng, it was like someone was grabbing his neck. His eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. Sealed, sealed, sealed pagoda. No one was blind. Even if they were blind, this aura couldn't be faked. The chief elder felt as if he had been ruthlessly struck in the head. His ears buzzed, his mind tumbled, and his body swayed. This was different from what he had imagined. Was there something wrong with the script? He clenched his teeth, the smell of blood leaking out from his mouth. This surname, Yao, clearly had a great killing weapon in his hands. As long as he took it out, who would dare to make things difficult for him? Was it fun to play with him? Of course, regardless of whether or not it was fun, the chief elder's first thought as he regained consciousness was to throw all of them into the pit that Qin Yu had dug. Moreover, what left them most indignant was that they had jumped into this pit of their own volition. It was over. The lion's mouth was already wider than the heavens. If Qin Yu grabbed hold of their sore spot, wouldn't they really have to swallow the heavens? Tai Qianxiu shouted out, "Grandmaster Yao, everything can be discussed. Do not be impulsive." Looking at the shining sealed pagoda, the Lord Sect Master even had the thought of strangling the chief elder and Wei Changfeng to death. "You two bastards, if you want to die, don't drag my Black Demon Sect down with you." Tai Qianxiu was well aware of just how terrifying the sealed pagoda was. It was because of this that he felt such a deep fear. Although the possibility wasn't high, if Yao Bin were to become enraged and open the gates of the sealed pagoda, releasing the poison within, then this day next year would be the Black Demon Sect's death anniversary. Qin Yu narrowed his eyes. He lightly said, "Sect Master, I have received the Black Demon Sect's graciousness of saving my life, and I have never forgotten it for a single moment. But today, there are some people who simply don't place me in their eyes at all. I can endure anything, but I cannot swallow this insult and humiliation. Do you think that I shouldn't counterattack now?" Tai Qianxiu cursed inwardly. "You were clearly the one who deliberately dug a pit for me, and now you want to pretend to be a good person?" But he could only keep these words in his stomach, unable to say a single word. Wei Changfeng immediately apologized to Grandmaster Yao and bear all of his losses until he is satisfied. "Otherwise, even my sect cannot protect you." For the Black Demon Sect, Elder Wei had been tossed out without hesitation. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he had been abandoned like an old shoe. If Qin Yu didn't forgive him, then it wasn't impossible for Tai Qianxiu to personally clean up the sect. Wei Changfeng quivered. His complexion paled and his body shivered. The pain and despair in his eyes made one want to cry. For someone who loved spirit stones to the extreme and loved putting them into his own storage ring, handing them over was the most painful torture in the world. In particular this time, not only did Wei Changfeng have to hand over what he had already eaten, but he feared that his entire family's wealth would be emptied. At this time, Elder Wei's heart was in complete chaos. The pain had left him delirious. Why should everyone divide the benefits together? But now that something has happened, I am the only one to suffer. Don't even think about it. Wei Changfeng howled out loud. "I will expose you. I will report you." The chief elder's heart shrank. He cursed inwardly, but it was already too late to stop him. Elder Wei, who had lost his mind, had bitten everyone out. Due to his incomparable passion for spirit stones, He clearly remembered every single piece of wealth that had been taken away from him. In the dark night, beneath the illumination of the lanterns, the black demon sect masters who were called out paled. As Tianjun heard his name being tossed out without hesitation, he nearly spat out a mouthful of blood. The scene was frighteningly quiet. All that was left over was Wei Chongfeng's heavy breathing. As he vented his emotions, the blood-red color in his eyes began to fade, and his chaotic thoughts began to recover. Fuck, what did I do? Elder Wei glanced around in a daze. Everyone looked at him as if they wanted to skin him alive, causing him to subconsciously shiver. But with things having come this far, there was no way to retreat. Wei Chongfeng clenched his teeth and said, Grandmaster Yao, all of your wealth was divided up by us. Since you want compensation, we should all share it. Qin Yu really wanted to walk over, grasp his hand, shake it several times, and praise him as a good comrade. Indeed, there were many good people in this world. Originally, he only wanted to grab one person to blackmail and have the entire Black Demon sect join in. But now, there was no need to go through so much trouble. Everyone had a share, and there was no need to worry. None of them would be able to escape. However, since there were so many people, wouldn't the things he reported before be too petty? Chapter 483. The farcical night ended with Tai Chinchio forcefully suppressing the high-level figures of the Black Demon sect, forcing them to swallow their pride and pay the bill. Qin Yu obtained various compensations equivalent to 3 billion spirit stones. Even in the entire land of divinity and demons, such a sum of extortion was rare. The storm vanished without a trace. Most of the Black Demon sect cultivators didn't know that they had taken a trip to the gates of hell. Of course, unless Tai Chinchio was truly thick-headed, Qin Yu absolutely didn't want things to get out of hand. He had the sealed pagoda and had also formed a partial Great Dao body. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that his strength had greatly increased, but to rely on this to completely suppress Tai Chinchio was a bit too optimistic. In short, the current situation could barely be considered a happy ending. Grandmaster Yao, please. Tai Chinchio smiled. Across from him, Qin Yu picked up a teacup and took a sip. He said with praise, Sect Master Spirit Tea is truly extraordinary. Tai Chinchio said, if Grandmaster likes it, I can have people prepare some and give it to you. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. Then I must thank Sect Master. In Tai Chinchio's dwelling, the two sat opposite each other and drank tea. The environment was quiet and peaceful. The two didn't speak much, but the way they interacted with each other indicated that Tai Chinchio recognized Qin Yu's current status. Only like this could they discuss the following matters. After drinking the pot of tea 4 times, the color of the tea became a bit lighter and the taste became a bit more distant. Tai Chinchio poured a cup of tea for Qin Yu. I can vouch for Grandmaster Yao and allow you to directly enter the Demon Ascension Gate without having to go through so many selections. Of course, with Grandmaster's methods, passing these tests should be easy. Qin Yu sighed inwardly. After entering the Black Demon sect, all he wanted was to obtain the qualifications to enter the Demon Ascension Gate and then join the demonic path to obtain the capital to resist the immortal sect. The process had been full of twists and turns, and he had stirred up countless accidents and troubles. Luckily, his several years hadn't been in vain, and he had finally achieved his goal today. I thank Sect Master for understanding. I have received the Black Demon sect's great graciousness, and I will engrave it in my heart. If there is a need in the future, I will not decline it. Of course, these were just pleasantries. There was more to come. After obtaining the approval of the sealed pagoda, I have obtained some harvests. Even if I am not here, I can still help Lord Sect Master eliminate the hidden dangers in your body and do my best. Tai Chinchio's eyes brightened. Is Mr. Yao speaking the truth? Qin Yu's thoughts stirred and ripples appeared in space. His face was handsome and devilishly charming, but as he looked around, his eyes were a bit dull, ruining his temperament. Sovereign, this person might be able to help you. Tai Chinchio frowned slightly. The aura of this young man in front of him was gloomy and strange, and it gave him a rather hostile feeling. However, his face was pale, and he seemed extremely weak. Chinyu smiled slightly and said, "Poison spirit, demonstrate your abilities to the sect lord." This youth was the spirit of poison that had been trapped in the sealed pagoda's small world for tens of thousands of years. Now that he had broken free and entered the land of divinity and demons, he could feel the different auras of the world around him. Beneath his stiff and dazed expression, his heart was surging with emotions. Was this the freedom he yearned for? He never thought that not only would he not die, but he would also be able to escape. Although he was filled with resentment towards Chinyu, he couldn't help but feel grateful. Hearing Chinyu's words, the spirit of poison swept his eyes over Tai Chinchio. He lifted a finger and a faint light covered it. Then, faint traces of black energy gushed out and fused into his body. Tai Chinchio stiffened. As the sovereign of one of the demonic path's branches, he had an extremely powerful cultivation. He could immediately see that this black energy was a poison that existed in the world. Who was this person? He was actually able to easily gather them and even directly swallow these poisons. It had to be known that poisons of the world were invisible and intangible. They wouldn't harm any living being. But once they gathered together, they would often have a terrifying toxicity. The Black Demon sect had the sealed pagoda, and the sealed pagoda was the inherited treasure of the myriad poison sect. As the sovereign, Tai Chinchio was well aware of some matters concerning the Tao of poison. Chinyu smiled. Poison spirit is a puppet of the sealed pagoda. He possesses a portion of the sealed pagoda's strength and is able to restrain the vast majority of poisons in this world. The myriad poison sect had been destroyed for tens of thousands of years. Only Chinyu knew what was inside the sealed pagoda. Now that he was speaking nonsense, he wasn't afraid of being seen through. Tai Chinchio smiled. "I am here to thank Mr. Yao for your help." Chinyu sneered inwardly. "If I didn't give you a plan to remedy the situation, would you have let me leave so easily?" This was only a mutually beneficial exchange. Of course, it was fine as long as he knew this in his heart. There was no need to say it out loud. Moreover, Chinyu still had some matters that he needed Tai Chinchio's help with. Sovereign, the sealed pagoda is an extremely important matter. I do not wish for others to know about it for a short period of time. It is already approved of me. Tai Chinchio revealed an awkward expression. I am naturally happy to help, but the matter of the sealed pagoda isn't an absolute secret in the demonic path. Once it disappears, it will surely be discovered by others. It will be difficult to conceal it. Chinyu said, "I know, so I have decided not to take away the sealed pagoda for the time being." Tai Chinchio was stunned. He had risked his life and spent a great deal of effort to obtain a treasure, but he wasn't going to take it away? Did he have a fever? Looking at Chinyu's calm expression, he quickly responded. The sealed pagoda had been in the Black Demon sect for tens of thousands of years, and they still hadn't been able to do anything to it, much less now that it had already recognized a master. Yaobin clearly had nothing to fear. Tai Chinchio felt a bit depressed, but he felt even more restless. Before the sealed pagoda recognized a master, even if everyone knew it was a dormant volcano, they wouldn't care about it. But now it had become Chinyu's. Who knew when the sealed pagoda would suddenly erupt while it was sleeping? But he had already spoken those words just now. If he wanted to refuse again, he didn't know what to do. Tai Chinchio hesitated. Chinyu smiled. "Sovereign, rest assured, I will join the Demon Ascension Gate soon and will inevitably become a member of the demonic path. I have no reason to be enemies with the Black Demon sect. Drawing back 10,000 steps, if I really do attack, does Sovereign think that I can remain unscathed?" These words were reasonable. In addition, Tai Chinchio needed help from Chinyu. He took a deep breath and said, "Good. I guarantee that I will not reveal anything related to the sealed pagoda." Communicating with smart people was always simple like this. Chinyu naturally knew that the sealed pagoda was a good thing and that it would be of great use to him. But he didn't want to make too many enemies in the demonic path because of this. The myriad poison sect had been destroyed for tens of thousands of years, and their original benefits had already been divided up by the other branches of the demonic path. Once the matter of Qin Yu obtaining the approval of the sealed pagoda was exposed, then whether or not he had the heart to rebuild the myriad poison sect, he would become a thorn in the eyes of the other demonic path branches. Perhaps he could spit out the meat that entered his mouth, but it had already been swallowed into his stomach and even digested to become a part of his body. Did he have to cut off his own flesh to repay this debt? That was clearly impossible. The sealed pagoda was a hidden card. Once Qin Yu obtained a certain status in the demonic path and used it, he might have some unexpected effects. But now that it was exposed, there would be no advantages. Tai Qinxiu also guessed Qin Yu's scruples. Although he was a bit unwilling to agree, the truth was that he actually relaxed. Since Qin Yu needed him to keep this a secret, then this puppet called the Spirit of Poison should be trustworthy. Both sides had their harvests in this exchange. After cupping his hands together, Tai Qianxiu turned and left, vanishing into the particularly dark night before dawn. Qin Yu sat down and drank another cup of tea. You know what happened? You need to help Tai Qianxiu eliminate his hidden dangers, but you can't let him immediately recover. Can you do this? The Spirit of Poison bowed. Master, rest assured that this subordinate will handle this matter properly. His calm and indifferent voice flowed with confidence. Qin Yu didn't doubt his words. He followed the Spirit of Poison's gaze and looked at the horizon, where a trace of white was gradually appearing. After thinking for a moment, Qin Yu didn't say anything. He quietly sat down, waiting for dawn with the Spirit of Poison. The skies became increasingly bright. The eastern skies were like a burning sea of fire, dyeing half the sky crimson. Suddenly, a great sun leapt out from the ground. It was like a sovereign of the heavens and earth, emitting endless light and heat as it looked down at the trillions of lives in the boundless world. The Spirit of Poison gently shivered. He stared at the rising sun in the east, infatuated. At this moment, Qin Yu could only see joy and gratitude in his eyes. Indeed, all life in this world loved the light. Even the Spirit of Poison, an existence born for the purpose of destruction and slaughter, couldn't rid himself of his yearning for the light. Qin Yu suddenly thought of the little blue lamp that could only emit light in the darkness. Although it had now become the incarnation of a great sun, it was still fundamentally opposed to light. What did this mean? As he fell deep in thought, time passed quickly. When the Spirit of Poison awoke, Qin Yu could clearly feel a trace of gratitude in his eyes. Thank you, Master, for giving me the chance to bathe in the sunlight. I no longer have any regrets and can return. Qin Yu waved his hand. I have no plans to take you back into the sealed pagoda's small world. The Spirit of Poison fiercely looked up, his eyes shaking. Qin Yu smiled. What, you don't believe me? He stood up and lightly said, Perhaps to others, you are synonymous with terror and destruction. But to me, you pose no threat at all. Perhaps my words are direct, but you should know that this is the truth. Since I don't fear a backlash from you, why would I imprison you? The Spirit of Poison's complexion darkened, but he didn't have the strength to refute this. Moreover, he had no reason to refuse. To be able to bathe in the sunlight every day, it was really something to look forward to. 10 days later, the grand ceremony of the demonic path's demon ascension gate that occurred once every 100 years finally began. Qin Yu and the chosen young elites of the Black Demon sect gathered in the Grand Hall. The one managing today's transmission was the Chief Elder. But he was clearly in low spirits, and he didn't want to face that hateful face. He only gave a few simple words of warning before announcing the start of the transmission. The array formation in the Grand Hall was already in an activated state. Black lines covered the white floor, and halos of light flowed about, giving off an extremely mysterious feeling. Qin Yu followed everyone into the transmission array. With a loud hum, the black lines that formed the transmission array began to shine with a brilliant light. Space twisted, and everyone within the array formation vanished from sight. The Chief Elder let out a long breath. He suddenly felt that he had lost a great deal of face, but he couldn't help but admit that the current Yao Bin was no longer someone he had the qualifications to shake. Chapter 484. The Demon Ascension Gates grand ceremony that was held once every 100 years was the only way for the demonic path to absorb new blood and recruit heroes of the world. It was natural for the entire demonic path to pay attention to this event. Heavenly Demon City, which was responsible for hosting this event, was currently under martial law. Without a warrant, no one was allowed to casually enter or leave in order to prevent any accidents from occurring during the grand ceremony. 12 transmission arrays were scattered throughout the square. Outside each transmission array, there were demonic path cultivators standing in silence. They didn't speak a single word, and their auras were cold and harsh. They gave off a feeling like they were vicious beasts that wanted to devour someone. Suddenly, in the southeast corner of the transmission array, lines began to rapidly light up. Space violently shook, causing ripples to appear. The figures of a group of cultivators gradually appeared in the shaking space. Shua. Qin Yu opened his eyes. He could feel the rapidly dissipating spatial fluctuations. He knew that the transmission array would soon end. And indeed, after several breaths of time, the colors around him gradually dimmed and the surrounding environment became clear. Black Demon Sect, 257 people participating in the Demon Ascension Gate. Count them. As this shout entered his ears, Qin Yu's heart skipped a beat. This voice was a bit hoarse and wasn't unpleasant to listen to, nor did it contain any excessive strength. But the feeling it gave off was terrifying to the extreme. Listening to this voice, one felt as if they were in an Azura hell. The rich smell of blood filled the air, making one feel as if they were about to vomit. The Black Demon Sect cultivators that were selected to participate in the Demon Ascension Gate all paled. Their eyes were filled with shock and fear. This demonic path cultivator's strength was truly terrifying. In particular, the infernal energy around him was so condensed that it was almost tangible. It was unknown just how much slaughter he had experienced in order to form this. Senior apprentice brother, the count is correct. Bring them away. As the Black Demon Sect people walked out of the transmission array, Qin Yu finally saw the demonic path cultivator with the astonishing infernal energy. This person was tall and slender, but his complexion was exceptionally pale, as if he had suffered severe blood loss. He gave off a feeling of weakness, completely different from what one imagined. And what was especially strange was that this person's aura fluctuated. Although he was clearly at the early Blue Sea realm, he gave off an unfathomably deep feeling. Several Black Demon Sect cultivators exhaled deeply. As they walked out of the transmission array, they discovered that this person was only at the early Blue Sea realm. They relaxed a little, and their expressions became a bit calmer. Qin Yu inwardly shook his head. These Black Demon Sect cultivators had underestimated this person. If they really fought, he feared that none of them would be his match. They were truly worthy of being the demonic path. In the entire land of divinity and demons, they were the only super influences that could stand toe-to-toe with the immortal sect. One could see such powerful individuals everywhere. Bring them to worship the golem. With a few words, this person turned and walked away. Such irresponsible behavior didn't arouse any dissatisfaction. Several demonic path cultivators bowed and looked at his back, their eyes filled with worship. He stood up and turned to those from the Black Demon Sect, his complexion indifferent. Follow us. Do not fall behind on the road. Otherwise, if you lose your little life, don't blame us for not reminding you. The people from the Black Demon Sect all revealed looks of indignation. For them to be chosen to participate in the Demon Ascension Gates grand ceremony, they could all be considered outstanding elites of their time. They were naturally proud and arrogant. You're not convinced? If you can enter the demonic path, you can come and find us at any time. But for now, you better behave yourselves. With a cold sneer, several demonic path cultivators spread out, surrounding the 257 people and walking out of the square. From the southwest, another group came. Both sides were moving in the same direction, so they inevitably met at the square's exit. The demonic path cultivator leading the way bowed. Greetings, senior apprentice Brother Zhou. Zhou Jianhai had a faint expression. Black demon sect disciples. This person revealed a nervous expression. Yes. Zhou Jianhai didn't say anything else. A demonic path cultivator beside him swept his eyes over the black demon sect group and sneered. Each generation really is worse than the last. This time, the black demon sect sent you shrimp soldiers and crab generals. Are you all here to make a fool of yourself? Behind him, a group of young cultivators laughed. It was impossible for any large influence to be completely united. Where there were people, there were rivers and lakes. Although this saying was a bit vulgar, it was indeed true. For instance, one of the 12 branch sects, the Black Demon Sect and the Soul-Burying Sect, had a dark history of grudges and grievances that could be traced back tens of thousands of years, or even longer. Although on the surface they were suppressed by the demonic path to maintain peace, they had never stopped fighting in secret. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that their hatred was as deep as the sea. Zhou Jianhai came from the Soul-Burying Sect, and the demonic path cultivator beside him also came from the Soul-Burying Sect. The group of young cultivators behind him were disciples that the Soul-Burying Sect had recommended to participate in the Demon Ascension Gate. Thus, both sides were enemies. A rough count showed that the Soul-Burying Sect had at least 400 to 500 people, nearly half more than the Black Demon Sect. And the demonic path had always believed in strength. From this point alone, one could see that when compared to the Soul-Burying Sect, the Black Demon Sect was at a disadvantage. But even so, the Black Demon Sect cultivators weren't willing to lower their heads and accept this humiliation. In addition to the anger they received from the demonic path cultivator leading them, their blood rushed to their heads, and they immediately began to shout. Neither side gave way. The atmosphere became tense, as if a conflict was about to break out. Senior apprentice Brother Zhou, please don't make things difficult for us. The demonic path cultivator leading the way tried his best to block the two sides, his eyes filled with worry and helplessness. They weren't liked to begin with, and if an accident were to occur today, then even if both sides were in the wrong, they feared that in the end the punishment would fall onto them. But so what if they weren't willing? Zhou Jianhai's recent limelight was unparalleled. The demonic path cultivator from the Soul-Burying Sect sneered. What is difficult about it? Little brats of the Black Demon Sect. If you aren't convinced then, you can come up and compete with the juniors of our Soul-Burying Sect. All you know is how to make a ruckus like a bunch of women. It's really disgraceful. As soon as these words were spoken, the complexions of the Black Demon Sect cultivators darkened. The hot-tempered ones had bloodshot eyes. The situation was about to spiral out of control. What are you all blocking here for? Are you trying to put on a monkey show for others to see? A light voice echoed out. Along with it was a bone-chilling chill. Everyone shuddered at the same time, and the scene suddenly became quiet. The demonic path cultivator beside Zhou Jianhai had a change in complexion. He clenched his teeth and said, "So it's senior apprentice Brother Shang. There is no need for you to concern yourself with a conflict between juniors of a branch sect." Shang Yuntai had an indifferent expression. "Bring them away. Don't miss the hour." He had completely ignored his words. The demonic path cultivator paled. But before he could speak again, Shang Yuntai's eyes fell on him and he stiffened. His mouth moved, but he didn't dare to utter a single syllable. Zhou Jianhai had no expression. Senior apprentice Brother Shang. What an imposing aura. Shang Yuntai lightly said, "Junior apprentice Brother Zhou must remember what time it is today. If you stir up any trouble, even elderly might not be able to suppress it." He waved his hand. "Let's go." The Black Demon Sect cultivators fell silent. Although they glared at the Soul-Burying Sect cultivators, no one said anything. Anger rose to their heads, and they inevitably lost control of their emotions. But as soon as they calmed down, they discovered that if they continued to make trouble, they would definitely suffer a loss. Perhaps because of this, they might even lose the chance to enter the Demon Ascension Gate. Thinking of this possibility, everyone calmed down. Senior apprentice brother Zhou, why must we avoid him? The elder ordered us to think of a way to thoroughly knock Shang Yuntai into the dust so that he can never rise again. Shut up. Zhou Jianhai's eyes darkened. Take him away. Don't cause any more trouble. He indeed wanted to place Shang Yuntai in a hopeless situation, but the premise was that he couldn't do so himself. There would be many more opportunities in the future. There was no need to cause trouble during the Demon Ascension Gate period. After leaving the square, the group of people quickly moved forwards. Faint sounds of complaints drifted into their ears. Senior apprentice brother, Zhou Jianhai is definitely doing this on purpose. That bastard. In front of senior apprentice brother, he was as docile as a dog. But now that he has power, he's gone wild. We can't let this matter rest so easily. Once senior apprentice brother recovers, we must teach him a lesson. Shang Yuntai had a calm expression. Enough. Hurry up and finish your task. Keep a low profile and don't stir up any trouble. He turned and left, his fists clenched in his sleeves. Unwillingness flashed in his eyes, but in the end it turned into bitterness. He was well aware of the current situation within his body. If he couldn't detoxify the poison, then everything would be for naught. But the efforts he had put in during this period of time had left him in despair. Perhaps this was his unchangeable destiny. Qinyu glanced at Shang Yuntai's back. His eyes flashed for a moment before he composed himself. The most important thing right now was to smoothly pass through the Demon Ascension Gate and become a member of the demonic path. Everything else could wait. The demonic path cultivators leading the way had ill complexions. The atmosphere was heavy and gloomy. Luckily, not long after they left the square, they arrived at their destination. In front of them was an extremely grand temple. The stone used to build this temple seemed to have experienced the erosion of countless years. It emitted an ancient aura. Outside the temple, there were many demonic path cultivators standing guard. The defenses were tight. Everyone stopped 1,000 feet away, waiting for the demonic path cultivators to carry out the handover. Let's go in and pay our respects to the demon statue. Qinyu looked up at the pitch-black temple doors, a dignified look in his eyes. This temple actually made him feel suppressed, as if there was an extremely terrifying existence within. But since he had already arrived here, there was no reason to shrink back. Qinyu followed the crowd and stepped into the temple. As he stepped in, his ears instantly fell silent. Besides the sound of his footsteps, there was no other sound, as if he had been completely isolated from the outside world. But now, there were already many people sitting cross-legged in this temple. In front of them was a giant demon statue that supported the entire temple. Green torches danced on both sides, but they couldn't completely illuminate the demon statue. Most of it was hidden in the darkness, causing one to instinctively feel awe towards it. In front of the demon statue stood a demonic path priest who was as thin as a stick, as if a gust of wind could blow him away. He wore a wide black robe, and his deep sunken eyes flashed with a strange light. Choose a cushion and sit down. His voice was hoarse and unpleasant to the ears, making one's head hurt. But no one dared to reveal this. They respectfully bowed, and each chose a cushion to sit down on. Qinyu's eyes drooped, covering up the shaking in his heart. This seemingly weak, demonic path priest actually possessed soul fluctuations as vast as the sea. If he were to attack, he would only need to sweep out his divine sense to turn over half the cultivators in this temple into idiots. The moment that Qinyu lowered his head, the demonic path priest seemed to sense something. He swept his eyes over, but didn't discover anything strange. He frowned. How interesting. The Demon Ascension Gate has really produced some amazing little fellows this time. The demonic path priest whispered to himself. Then he swept his eyes over the temple. Close the door. The giant stone at the entrance of the temple slowly fell down. At the same time, the lights in the temple were extinguished one after another. Finally, all that was left over were the two giant green torches in front of the demon statue. The demonic path priest turned around and faced the demon statue. He raised his hands and loudly chanted. The strange syllables were sharp and grating, constantly echoing through the temple. At first it was grating, but soon one adapted to it. There was even a warm feeling that rose from the depths of one's heart. Qin Yu's vision blurred, and he subconsciously closed his eyes. Exhaustion washed over him like a tide, submerging his consciousness. At this time, within his soul space, the soul-summoning bell suddenly trembled, emitting a clear, ringing sound. Qin Yu's chaotic consciousness suddenly awoke. He was instantly covered in a cold sweat. With his soul cultivation, he had actually been unknowingly hypnotized while on guard. This was simply unimaginable. But on the surface, Qin Yu maintained his original appearance, not daring to reveal any abnormalities. The strange syllables became increasingly rapid. All the cultivators in the temple began to shiver, as if they were experiencing some horrifying dream. Suddenly, a cultivator cried out miserably. Before he could respond, black flames gushed out from his head. In the blink of an eye, this person was burned to ashes. Following that, 2 more cultivators were burned to death by the black flames in the same manner. The demonic path priest stopped chanting. His eyes were icy cold and filled with hatred. Heresy that tries to invade the demonic path. I curse your souls to fall into hell, never to be freed. A strong wind rose up. The ashes that were burned to ashes by the black flames began to tumble about in the air, drawing out figures in the air, each one of them in extreme pain. In the next moment, a deep roar resounded in the temple. The demon statue opened its mouth, a pitch black hole that seemed to lead to an endless abyss. 3 figures of ashes struggled as they were swallowed up. The demonic path priest faced the demon statue. His wrinkled and withered face revealed an incomparably pious expression. Unsurpassed demon, your most humble servant offers you the soul of a heresy. I ask that you bestow upon me the seed of your demonic nature, so that the children under your rule will always be bathed in your unsurpassed dignity. The demon statue's eyes suddenly opened. Within them were 2 spinning black vortexes. Purple motes of light flew out from the vortexes. These motes of light seemed to have a mind of their own. They followed the cultivators' life auras and landed in the temple, above the heads of all the cultivators. The demonic path priest turned around. His eyes swept over the faint purple motes of light, illuminating their faces. He flicked his sleeves and 4 streams of demonic energy flew out, each fusing into a young cultivator's body. The 4 people trembled and woke up at the same time. They looked around, especially at the purple motes of light above their heads. Their eyes immediately filled with fear. The demonic path priest's voice was ice cold. If you've awoken, then withdraw to the side. The 4 people didn't dare to say anything. They crawled up and respectfully bowed. Then, they quickly moved to a corner of the temple and used various methods to lock down their auras. As they saw the purple motes of light above their heads fly away, they relaxed. Then, they looked at the crowd of people sitting in the temple and couldn't help but reveal a look of pity in their eyes. Although Qin Yu didn't open his eyes, he could sense everything that occurred in the temple. Of the 4 people that were awakened by the demonic path priest, he actually happened to recognize one of them. In the 4 Seasons City auction house, when they were competing for the pre-celestial wood, there were 4 young masters that had fought each other because of jealousy. This person was the one who had clamored for double the price, but had never tasted defeat. Sun Zifu. Yes, this was his name. This person seemed to come from some tyrannical demonic path, noble family. The 3 people beside him, looking at their demeanor and bearing, clearly had extraordinary backgrounds. For the demonic path priest to awaken these 4 people alone, it seemed that the purple motes of light above their heads weren't some benevolent being. Qin Yu's heart tightened. At this time, as the demonic path priest pointed a finger, the purple motes of light above everyone's heads fell down and fused into their flesh and blood. The purple moon trembled. Faint traces of purple moonlight fell down like snowflakes. A purple mote of light appeared in Qin Yu's soul space. But before it could respond, it was wrapped up by the purple snowflakes of moonlight. The purple mote of light trembled, emitting traces of a cruel and violent aura. It smashed around in the purple moonlight. Qin Yu cursed inwardly. Although the purple moon had trapped this mode of light, judging from its reaction, it was likely that the demonic path priest would discover it. At that time, things would become troublesome. And as he thought, the demonic path priest beneath the demon statue looked at him with eyes as cold as lightning. Qin Yu's complexion didn't change, but his body tensed up. At this time, the slumbering soul-summoning bell flew over on its own. The moonlight scattered, but the purple mote of light had already calmed down and obediently flew into the soul-summoning bell. Outside, the demonic path priest's icy-cold eyes flashed with hesitation. He carefully sensed the fluctuations of the demonic seed for a long time, and only then did he look away. Chapter 485. An hour later, the doors to the main hall opened. Everyone was startled awake, and their complexions changed. But no matter how they investigated, they couldn't find anything strange. Sun Zifu and the others had already returned to their original positions. There was no flaw in their expressions, but their eyes occasionally flickered, revealing a bit of mockery. The demonic path priest sat down. His thin body seemed even smaller now, as if managing this ceremony had consumed far too much strength. He didn't say anything more. The demonic path cultivators outside respectfully entered the main hall and led everyone away. When Qin Yu came out, he saw another group of young demonic cultivators waiting outside the main hall, their eyes filled with anticipation. Unfortunately, they had no idea what sort of result they would face after entering the main hall. There were around 600 people who had passed the demon statue test with Qin Yu. At this time, they were gathered together. Everyone, congratulations on passing the test. You have obtained the basic qualifications to join the demonic path. The Demon Ascension Gate will open tomorrow. Today, you may freely move about in the public area of Heavenly Demon City. Remember, starting from now, no one is allowed to fight in private. If you violate this rule, you will be severely punished. You may even be stripped of your qualifications to enter the Demon Ascension Gate. After arranging their accommodations, the demonic path cultivators left. It seemed that after passing the demonic path test, they had obtained some sort of recognition and were no longer restricted. The people from the Black Demon sect were gathered in a giant courtyard. Qin Yu casually chose a room, and the other Black Demon sect cultivators quickly left, as if they wanted to avoid him. Qin Yu closed the door, not caring about these people's reactions. He carefully swept out with his divine sense and didn't sense anything wrong. Then he sat down cross-legged and entered his soul space. The soul summoning bell was still sleeping, not responding to his probing. Qin Yu carefully sensed that the purple light was in a sealed state. This allowed Qin Yu to relax a little. The soul summoning bell had already recognized him as its master. Although it was a bit strange right now, it shouldn't harm him. As for how to remove it, he could only wait for the soul summoning bell to awaken before thinking of a way. When Qin Yu opened his eyes, the skies outside had already darkened. After a moment of thought, he pushed open the door. The entire courtyard was quiet and the rooms were shrouded in darkness, as if everyone had left. At this time, several people passed by outside the courtyard. The faint sounds of conversation entered his ears. "Hurry, I heard that there's a shop in the West City that has a spirit awakening water. This is a treasure that can keep the soul awake at all times. If we can obtain it and enter the Demon Ascension Gate, we'll have more to rely on. Every time the Demon Ascension Gate opens, in order to increase the passing rate of disciples, many precious treasures will appear in Heavenly Demon City's night market today. We absolutely cannot miss out on this. Let's go. Let's go. If I'm late, I'm afraid that I'll be missing him." They left in a hurry. Qin Yu had a thoughtful look. No wonder there wasn't a single person in the courtyard. It seemed that everyone from the Black Demon sect had run off to buy treasures. As for why no one called for him, the Demon Ascension Gate had strict rules. For those that surpassed 100 years of age, the difficulty of the test would rise by several times. Unless one possessed heaven-defying strength, it was impossible to pass. Thus, Even though Qin Yu had revealed an extremely powerful cultivation, the people of the Black Demon sect still maintained a respectful distance from him. They feared that if they were involved with him, they would be implicated after entering the Demon Ascension Gate. Why did the people of the Black Demon sect determine that Qin Yu was over 100 years old? The biggest reason was that he had borrowed Yao Bin's identity. Who didn't know that Grandmaster Yao had been hiding in the Black Demon sect for dozens of years? One didn't need to be a genius to know that he was an old fellow. Moreover, if he wasn't old enough, how could this surname, Yao, have such a tyrannical cultivation? In their subconscious, no one believed that someone of the same generation could have the strength to completely roll over them. Qin Yu naturally wouldn't explain too much to them. After thinking for a moment, he closed the door and walked out of the courtyard. In the dark of night, because of tomorrow's Demon Ascension Gate's grand ceremony, Heavenly Demon City was particularly lively. The lights were as bright as day. The streets surged with people. Qin Yu casually chose a direction and followed the flow of people. Most of the people coming and going were young cultivators that would be participating in the Demon Ascension Gate tomorrow. Their eyes were filled with anticipation, and their faces were full of confidence. When the demonic path recruited disciples, the elimination rate was astonishing. It was normal for only 1 or 2 out of 100 people to be selected. Thus, there were many demonic path cultivators participating in the Demon Ascension Gate. Besides the 12 branches of the demonic path, there were various demonic path aristocratic families, sects that had pledged allegiance to the demonic path, and even wandering cultivator masters of the demonic path. Roughly estimating, there would be at least 10,000 demonic path cultivators entering the Demon Ascension Gate. Of course, the number that would ultimately enter the demonic path would be no more than 200. Qin Yu was confident that with his current strength, it wouldn't be difficult for him to distinguish himself in the Demon Ascension Gate. But who had absolute confidence in everything in this world? If he could find some treasures that could increase his chances of victory, he certainly wouldn't mind. Unfortunately, along the way, he saw many demonic path treasures. Some of them were indeed good and attracted many demonic path cultivators to compete for them. But they weren't too attractive to Qin Yu. On the streets, whether it was the shops on both sides or the stalls, they were all crowded with people. From time to time, one could hear the sounds of buyers and sellers haggling over prices. Suddenly, a familiar voice entered his ears. "Humph! If you keep increasing the price bit by bit, just how long will it take? If you want to play, then double the price. 100,000 spirit stones, I want that thing." Qin Yu subconsciously arched an eyebrow. He looked towards the source of the voice and saw several demonic path cultivators surrounding him. The one who spoke was Sun Zifu. At this time, this direct descendant young master of a demonic path noble family was sneering. Standing beside him was a tall and slender female cultivator. Her face was covered by a thin, translucent veil, making her look extremely seductive. This woman was the beautiful female cultivator that had caused 4 spoiled brats to fight at the auction house. Although Qin Yu knew that even if they didn't cause trouble, Qi Chung still wouldn't sit idly by and watch as he bought the pre-celestial wood. He just couldn't develop any good impressions of these people. Just as he was about to turn and leave, he suddenly paused. Within his soul space, the slumbering soul summoning bell suddenly began to ring. A strong sense of desire passed to Qin Yu, and the item it wanted was the black stone in the hands of the pleasantly surprised stall owner. "Humph, fellow Taoist son, you want to take away this strange stone with a mere 100,000 spirit stones? I'll bid 150,000. A gloomy cultivator sneered across from him. 300,000. Sun Zifu had an indifferent expression. 350,000. 700,000. The crowd was shocked. To most people here, 700,000 spirit stones wasn't too outrageous. But the key was Sun Zifu's attitude of not caring at all. Look, this was what a true rich person was like. In the crowd, many demonic path female cultivators blinked their eyes, secretly wishing they were spinach in autumn. Sun Zifu was overjoyed. If he could obtain a little bit of money and gain the favor of so many beautiful women, it was far too worth it. Luckily, He knew what his main goal was today. He suppressed the itch in his heart and only smiled at Zhou Fenghuang. Stall owner, can you let me take a look at this stone? A cultivator suddenly walked out from the crowd. His entire body was covered in black robes, but one could see that he was tall and sturdy and had a bit of prestige to him. The stall owner hesitated. Now that he knew the value of this stone, he clearly didn't feel at ease. The black-robed cultivator lightly said, "Do you think I would dare to steal it in front of everyone's eyes?" The stall owner thought for a moment and then nodded, handing the stone to him. The black-robed cultivator thanked him and carefully observed it. Sun Zifu had a calm expression. He didn't stop them. In his opinion, this stone was already his. The more these people looked at it, the more disappointed they would be. 1,000,000 spirit stones. The black-robed cultivator quoted a price and returned the stone to the stall owner. Everyone was amazed. They never thought that such a low-key person would actually be so generous. The gloomy cultivator frowned, killing intent in his eyes. Although this wonder stone is good, not just anyone has the qualifications to compete for it. 1,000,000. His words were filled with threat. The black-robed cultivator remained silent. It could be regarded as fear, or it could be regarded as indifference. Looking at his calm demeanor, it was clear that it was the latter. The gloomy cultivator paled. If it weren't for Heavenly Demon City being under martial law tonight, he feared he would have already attacked. Sun Zifu laughed. Good. The more the merrier. If we can easily buy it, how can we show how precious this treasure is? 2,000,000 spirit stones. Please do as you wish. The black-robed cultivator lightly said, 5,000,000. The gloomy cultivator followed closely behind. 6,000,000. This stone was the one that he had taken a fancy to first. He should have been able to obtain it for several thousand spirit stones, but Sun Zifu had interfered, leading to the current situation. However, the Sun family was one of the top aristocratic families of the demonic path, and their influence wasn't any weaker than the one behind him. Even though he was enraged, he could only endure it. Thus, when the black demon cultivator interfered, he had to bear the brunt of his anger. His eyes blazed with killing intent. However, this gaze was clearly useless against the black-robed cultivator. But the more this happened, the more the gloomy cultivator became enraged. You bastard! After today, I will make you suffer a fate worse than death. Sun Zifu snapped his fingers. 2,000,000. The crowd gasped, doubled, and doubled again. Those who recognized his identity all came to a sudden realization, and their gazes were filled with even more reverence. No wonder he had acted so boldly. So he was the Sun family of the Zhao, Qian, Sun, and the Path. This was a mystical family that could rival a country in wealth. Only this sort of top young master would have such astonishing wealth. The gloomy cultivator looked at the wonder stone in the stall owner's hand. He had cultivated a secret technique in his early years and could faintly feel a strange fluctuation coming from this wonder stone. This stone was ordinary, but what was inside was not. 6,000,000. The black-robed cultivator said, 1,000,000. From beginning to end, his tone hadn't changed at all. This calmness caused Sun Zifu's eyes to brighten, as if he had met his match. To think that ever since he was a child, he had never tasted defeat when it came to doubling bids. Well, it was more accurate to say that he had only tasted defeat once, as he thought back to the two madmen that wildly bid at Four Seasons City's auction house. Sun Zifu's lips twitched. Luckily, he had an excuse that he didn't want to involve the immortal sect in this matter, so he could use it to cover his face. Otherwise, he would have lost a great deal of face. In a bad mood, young Master Sun coldly sneered. 2,000,000. He swept his eyes around. You too, this wonder stone is mine. If you don't believe me, feel free to give it a try. The gloomy cultivator clenched his teeth. In terms of background and strength, he didn't fear the Sun family, but in terms of wealth, the difference between them was more than a ton. Over 10,000,000 spirit stones was already the limit of what he could withstand. Who would have thought that this surnamed Sun would actually spend such a large sum for a stone of unknown effect? But if he were to give up like this, he would feel that it was too shameful. Just as he was about to collapse from anger, the black-robed cultivator lightly said, 12. 3 million. The gloomy cultivator's complexion stiffened, and the evil fire in his heart suddenly erupted. I can't compare to Sun Zifu. But who the hell do you think you are? You actually dare to step on me. Brat, recklessly opening a bid will kill you. If you can't take out 10 million spirit stones, I guarantee that you will regret it. The black-robed cultivator maintained his initial attitude of disregard, not even glancing at him. He took out a crystal spirit stone card with a lifelike demon phantom on it. A top spirit stone card. A limit of 100 million. Who is this person? What a great deal. The gloomy cultivator's complexion paled. He wanted to slap someone, but was instead slapped in the face. But at this time, he didn't dare to casually open his mouth again. It had to be known that a top spirit stone card wasn't something that could be used with money alone. It represented a symbol of status. To be able to take out a top spirit stone card was enough to prove the black-robed cultivator's status. Those with status, no matter where they were, would be respected. Sun Zifu's heart skipped a beat. He thought to himself that it was a close call. Today he had nearly failed to show off and was instead cursed. Luckily, when he returned home, he had made a scene and obtained a top spirit stone card from his father. With a light cough, Sun Zifu calmly took out his crystal spirit stone card. Fellow Taoist, I am Sun Zifu of the Sun family. I only competed with you today because I was excited by the prospect of hunting. I ask that you don't take offense. He paused for a moment and then said, 24. 6 million. The black-robed cultivator lightly said, 24. 7 million. Only adding 100,000 meant that there were no spirit stones at all. This was the consensus of everyone present. The gloomy cultivator could only darken his face. He was powerless to interfere in the bidding of both sides. Sun Zifu's heart skipped a beat. He smiled and said, May I ask if this wondrous stone is very important to fellow Taoist? The black-robed cultivator nodded. This sort of calmness was sometimes a kind of self-confidence. Sun Zifu put away the spirit stone card. I don't know what this wondrous stone is. I just thought it was interesting. Since fellow Taoist values it so highly, a gentleman doesn't take advantage of others. I ask that fellow Taoist not take offense. I will ask you to spend a bit more spirit stones. As soon as these words left his mouth, everyone was stunned. They couldn't help but praise him 108 times in their hearts. Young Master Sun's methods were excellent. With a few words, he had been able to step down without losing any face. He had even made it difficult for the other party to feel any resentment and even wanted to owe him a favor. Good methods. Even Zhou Fengwang revealed a bit of appreciation in her eyes. This caused Sun Zifu's heart to flutter. The black-robed cultivator hesitated for a moment. He cupped his hands together and said, Thank you, fellow Taoist son, for parting with your treasure. He turned to the stall owner. Now, we can make the transaction. The stall owner was overjoyed. He didn't dare to ask for more. He nodded again and again, but before he could open his mouth, he was blocked. I'm sorry, but I'm also somewhat interested in this stone. The crowd suddenly fell into a deathly silence. Time seemed to have stopped for a second, and then the crowd parted to reveal the tall and straight figure behind him. Beneath the shocked gazes of the crowd, his expression was light, as if he hadn't said those words just now. Chapter 486. The black-robed cultivator's eyes fell on Qinyu. His pupils shrank for a moment before he composed himself. Please state your price. Qinyu said, 30 million. An additional 100,000 black-robed cultivators. Qinyu said 40 million. The black-robed cultivator added another 100,000. Qinyu was silent for several breaths of time. He flipped his hand and took out a crystal spirit stone card. 100 million. The entire place was deathly silent. Even though they had just seen young Master Sun's extremely heroic way of playing the game, they still felt their ears ring and their eyes stare blankly. 100 million. That's 100 million spirit stones. Brother, are you sure you're not messing with me? Sun Zifu's eyes rolled back. Although he didn't want to admit it, this kind of bidding method was indeed more awesome than doubling the price. It wasn't that the dignified young master of the Sun family couldn't produce this amount of spirit stones, but he had a good reason to do so at the Four Seasons City Auction House. The Zhao, Qin, Sun, and Li family, these four great demonic path aristocratic families, were simultaneously pursuing the proud daughters of heaven of the Zhou and Mu families. Sun Zifu's spending of tens of thousands of gold had obtained the approval of his family. This was a special matter. If he were to do what he did that day for a stone of unknown attributes, he would definitely be impeached by the family. One had to know that the Sun family had many branches and leaves, and there was more than one young master and young mistress in the direct line of descent. However, his branch was the most outstanding, and that was why he had more authority. Sun Zifu didn't want to get himself into trouble because of this, so he could only be depressed. Fortunately, he had expressed his intention to stop just now, so it wasn't too shameful on the surface. In the end, it was because he couldn't get over his own heart. The black-robed cultivator remained silent for a long time before raising the price by another 100,000. Without expression, Qin Yu flipped his hand and took out a second crystal spirit stone card. 200 million. If the entire place was deathly silent just now, then it was so quiet now that even the sound of breathing had disappeared. Doubled again. Sun Zifu's face darkened. He felt like someone had ruthlessly stepped on his face. The pain in his heart flowed like a river. This was the second time. The first time was at the Four Seasons City Auction House. Young Master Sun had never expected that not long after, he would be defeated again. This was the only second defeat in his life. The sorrow was so great that it could not be described with just the word pain. The black-robed cultivator pulled down his hood, revealing a resolute face. His deep purple eyes contained boundless might. Purple eye, bloody battle devil god. Heavens, it's actually him. Every time the Demon Ascension Gate opened, there would be many proud children of heaven that would rise above the rest, becoming the most dazzling existences that were the focus of all. Blood Battle Demon God was a super master of a younger generation that had appeared during the Demon Ascension Gate selection. This person's background was unknown, but it was rumored that he was recommended by a rogue cultivator. His physical body was extremely strong. In the selection arena, he was surrounded by 4 young experts of the same level, and in the end, he killed all of them. That battle was also the battle that made the Blood Battle Demon God famous. According to the speculations of authoritative figures, this person had awakened some sort of slaughter attribute demonic bloodline, and his demon body cultivation had also reached a higher level. He was a rare demonic path genius. Zhuolanyu greets you. The Blood War Devil God cupped his hands together. Qin Yu returned the greeting. Yao Bin, Zhuolanyu said, this wondrous stone is extremely important to me. If you are willing to part with it, I will be endlessly grateful. In the future, if fellow Taoist Yao has any needs, I will do my best to help. This was a promise. Moreover, it was a promise from someone like the Bloody Battle Devil God, a super expert of the younger generation who was publicly acknowledged to be highly regarded. His future was limitless. Thus, this promise could be said to be extremely precious. In the future, it might even play an immeasurable role. Moreover, there is a deeper meaning to these words. I've already stated that this wondrous stone is extremely important to me. If you give it to me, then I will owe you a great favor. But if you don't, humph, I fear we will become enemies. To be hated by someone like the Bloody Battle Devil God wasn't an easy matter. No matter how arrogant one was, when faced with such a hidden threat, they would still have to carefully consider it. Zhuolanyu had a light expression, not revealing the least bit of embarrassment. In this life, what he pursued was the peak of the great Tao. As long as he could become stronger, the method he used wasn't important at all. Countless eyes fell on Qin Yu's face. They thought, you're only a mere first or second level blue sea. So how could you dare to oppose the Bloody Battle Devil God? No matter how many spirit stones you have, in the end you will still have to obediently lower your head and admit defeat. Sun Zifu's eyes brightened and his heart filled with excitement. Luckily, he was smart enough. If he continued to maintain a high profile like this, the one who would be stuck between a rock and a hard place would be him. Surname Yao, aren't you very arrogant? Fight with the bloody battle devil god then. If you dare, then I'll admire you. The gloomy cultivator stiffened. His forehead was covered with a cold sweat. He never imagined that the person he had provoked time and time again would be such a ruthless character like the bloody battle devil god. Luckily, this person didn't lower himself to his level. Otherwise, his fate would have been miserable. Qinyu had a calm expression. He looked at Zhuo Lanyue's purple eyes and said, I don't know you, so there is no need to worry about face between us. Since this is an open competition, if fellow Taoist Zhuo is unwilling, you can continue to increase the price. This was a refusal without leaving any room for negotiation. Zhuo Lanyue furrowed his eyebrows. Fellow Taoist Yao, do you really want to do this? Qinyu lightly said, This is not what I want, so I cannot give in. Zhuo Lanyue's purple eyes flashed. From today on, no matter who it is, as long as they can hand over this wonder stone to me, they can obtain 100 million spirit stones, as well as a promise for me. There was an uproar. This was the same as directly issuing a bounty on Qinyu. No one thought that the bloody battle devil god would act in such a cruel and tyrannical manner. If you don't agree, then you are my enemy, and I won't rest until you die. That's right, I won't rest until you die. From the moment he spoke, he was destined to become Qinyu's great life and death enemy. Zhuo Lanyue turned and walked away. The crowd drew back, afraid that they would be angered. A trace of killing intent flashed in Qinyu's eyes. He coldly sneered. What dog shit blood demon war god? Since this was something that the soul summoning bell desired, then it didn't matter who came. Qinyu could clearly feel the cold and covetous eyes of those around him, but he didn't feel any fear in his heart. If anyone wanted to obtain this bounty, then they could do so. He just wanted to see what the final result would be. After handing over the Spirit Stone card, Qinyu received the Wonder Stone. This stone was only the size of an adult's fist, but its weight was astonishing. It was no wonder that it would cause such a fierce struggle. However, besides Zhuo Lanyue, no one else knew what secrets this stone was hiding. Even when Qinyu held this stone in his hand, he couldn't sense anything strange about it. He turned and left the crowd. His steps didn't seem fast, but after several flashes, he vanished into the surging stream of people. Sun Zifu's complexion was cloudy and uncertain. Zhou Fenghuang stared at the crowd in the distance, a bit of hesitation in her eyes. She always felt as if she had seen this cultivator somewhere before. Yao Bin, she carefully thought about it and determined that she didn't have any memories of this name. She shook her head and suppressed this thought. She turned to Sun Zifu. Seeing his expression, Zhou Fenghuang's eyes flashed. She charmingly smiled and said, Brother Sun, could it be that you have thoughts of recruiting the blood battle demon god? Sun Zifu shook his head. If I can seize this wonder stone, I might be able to obtain Zhuo Lanyue's favorable impression and recruit him as my subordinate. But with this person's talent and strength, it is almost certain that he will rush into the demon ascension gate and enter the demonic path. His future achievements will be hard to imagine. Although the Sun family has some strength, they might not be able to control him. He paused for a moment. Moreover, Yao Bin isn't an ordinary person. If we take this wonder stone from his hands, we might be harmed instead. Zhou Fenghuang covered her mouth and laughed. Brother Sun's words are reasonable. A strange light flashed deep in her eyes. Qinyu returned to his dwelling and summoned the 9th province furnace. Borrowing its strength to isolate the outside world, he took out the Wonder Stone. Without needing to activate it, the slumbering soul summoning bell flew out from his soul space. With a flash of light, the little girl's figure appeared. Her eyes widened and her face lit up with pleasant surprise. She cheered and threw herself at the Wonder Stone. Then she lowered her head and took a bite. Gotcha! Katja! The crisp sound of chewing entered his ears. Chinyu stared at her small white teeth, and black lines appeared on his forehead. When he was inspecting it just now, he had already tested it. This Wonderstone was astonishingly hard. Even with his current strength, it would be difficult for him to leave a mark on it. But what did he see now? A 5- or 6-year-old little girl was hugging this Wonderstone and eating it in great gulps. Her teeth were simply amazing. However, as he thought about how this little girl's true form was the soul treasure soul summoning bell, and that her consciousness was the golden soul of nothingness that came from a terrifying different world, Chinyu felt that no matter how abnormal this was, he could still accept it. But as he looked at the little girl eating in great gulps and not the least bit tired, it was hard not to suspect that her previous deep sleep was just an act. What is this stone? Delicious. I'm asking you a question. Delicious, delicious. Chinyu's eyebrows arched up. He looked at the little girl who was clearly pretending to be stupid. Did you think I wouldn't be able to do anything to you just like this? He reached out a hand and snatched the Wonderstone from her hand. What are you doing? The little girl panicked. She opened her mouth and bit down on the Wonderstone. She struggled in midair, clawing at Chinyu. Chinyu had no expression. The soul summoning bell is mine. I rescued you from a different world, and I also bought this stone. But now I don't know anything about your condition. Isn't this a bit too much? Answer my question, otherwise I guarantee that you won't be able to eat this stone. Moreover, don't think that I will help you obtain anything in the future. The little girl had a fierce expression. If looks could kill, Chin, you would have already been riddled with holes. Unfortunately, these little eyes of hers were useless against Chinyu. I will give you 10 breaths of time to consider. I won't wait any longer. The little girl glared at Chinyu. 6 breaths of time. 3 breaths of time. 1 breath of time. Katja! The little girl bit off the stone in her mouth and nimbly fell to the ground. You bastard, you are ruthless. Chinyu was expressionless. Answer my question. Seeing that he wouldn't budge, the little girl seemed a bit discouraged. Humph, you don't even have the slightest bit of eyesight. You really are an idiot. This is called the Heaven Mending Stone. It is an extremely precious and rare stone. For some reason, it was formed when the world was born. Because of the entanglement of rules and heaven and earth origin energy, it was formed after a long period of time. The soul summoning bell's main body is severely damaged, and the Heaven Mending Stone can help repair it. This is the reason. Do you understand? Chin Yu's eyes flashed. Although the little girl was impatient, she had clearly stated the key point. This stone could help the soul summoning bell restore itself. What is the relationship between you and the soul summoning bell? Or why can the soul of nothingness fuse into the soul summoning bell? The little girl was annoyed. I've already answered your question. Chin Yu shook the Heaven Mending Stone in his hand. The little girl's complexion darkened. Humph! The soul summoning bell is the holy relic of my race. She coldly glared at him. As for you, you're nothing more than a thief. This explanation was too strong. Chin Yu couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. But soon his mind began to race. His intuition told him that the little girl wasn't lying, and this was the best chance to learn the truth. Even so, he sneered in disbelief. The soul summoning bell has been passed down in the land of divinity and demons for countless years. Now that I obtained it through a lucky chance, how could it possibly belong to your race? Little children shouldn't speak such nonsense. The little girl was enraged. You are the little child. You are the one speaking nonsense. What soul summoning bell? Its true name is the Cosmic Sea Cross Bell. She suddenly stopped, her expression vigilant. No, why should I explain it to you? Chin Yu's heart skipped a beat, but his complexion didn't change. He curled his lips in disdain. If you don't want to say it, then forget it. Making up a story is just child's play. I'm not in the mood to listen to it. The little girl puffed up her cheeks in anger. Chin Yu suddenly said, During this time, you must have spent a great deal of effort to undo the ownership, right? The little girl's face was filled with panic like a little animal. Her eyes widened, as if saying, how would you know? There was no mistake about it. Chin Yu's complexion darkened. He had only been casually trying to trick her, but he didn't think it would actually turn out like this. It looks like you have failed to live up to my trust in you. The little girl bit her lips. What are you being so fierce for? I haven't found a way to undo the ownership, Yu sneered. If you can't find it now, you think you can't find it in the future? It's impossible for me to keep a hidden danger by my side. Perhaps I should think of a way to erase your consciousness. The little girl's eyes were filled with panic. Don't even think about it. Yu's eyes were icy cold. This matter might be troublesome, but in the end, I am the master of the soul-summoning bell. If I don't hesitate to pay any price, there will always be a way to accomplish it. If my consciousness disappears, the soul-summoning bell will also disappear. Everything you have done will be for naught. Even so, it's better than suffering a sudden backlash one day. In terms of intimidation and threats, although the little girl was intelligent, how could she compare to the experienced and knowledgeable Yu? Her eyes filled with tears as she looked at him in panic. Don't kill Mimi. I could sign a contract with you. As long as it is established, I will never hurt you again. Yu frowned. Really? The little girl nodded again and again. Mimi isn't lying to you. Hand over the contract. If I find out and you dare to do anything to me, humph humph. At this time, Yu's face was like that of a great villain. The frightened little girl trembled as she threw out a ball of light. Through his connection with the soul-summoning bell, Yu was able to clearly sense the information within. It was indeed a contract. The general idea was that Yu and the little girl would cooperate on equal terms and that they would share weal and woe in the future. However, Yu controlled the soul-summoning bell. From the very start, this contract was established on an unequal basis. He lifted a hand and touched the point between his eyebrows. The ball of light sank into his soul space. Yu's soul opened its mouth and swallowed the ball of light. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.